The ocean at night has a way of softening everything, as though the world slowly exhales and releases the accumulated weight of the day. The dark water drapes itself gently across the landscape of Bikini Bottom, transforming the familiar into something distant and hushed, something that invites reflection and quiet purpose. Across the sandy stretches and coral-lined streets, a gentle stillness spreads, settling into the corners of every structure and the grooves of every shell. Even the ever-present hum of ocean currents seems to slow, as if respecting the rest that most of the sea creatures take for granted. It is within this rare and delicate atmosphere that Plankton begins to move, guided not by impulse or frustration, but by a calm determination he has never felt before. For years he has chased something that always remained just out of reach. Countless plans, machines, disguises, tunnels, distractions, and strategies have filled his days and nights, each one crafted with precision, only to collapse under the weight of bad luck, unexpected resistance, or his own overconfidence. Throughout these repeated failures, a gnawing cycle has shaped his existence, a cycle made of ambition rising sharply and hope falling even faster. Yet tonight, within the quiet embrace of the ocean, that cycle seems to loosen. For the first time, he does not feel frantic. He does not feel rushed. He does not feel like he is fighting the tide. Instead, he senses a peculiar harmony beneath the water, a slow rhythm that seems to match the steady pulse of his determination. The world feels open, still, and waiting. The possibility of success seems no longer fantastical, but quietly attainable. In the dim glow of the chum bucket's interior, Plankton prepares with a sense of precision shaped not by desperation, but by focus. Every movement he makes is measured. Every step he takes across the smooth metal floor is deliberate. He has rehearsed this moment in his mind for years, letting it take shape between waking attempts and exhausted sleep. Tonight, for reasons he cannot fully explain even to himself, his mind feels perfectly clear. There is no external distraction, no frantic brainstorming of last-minute adjustments, no half-finished gadgets falling apart in the corner. Everything he needs has been arranged carefully. Everything has been tested. His tools are compact, simple, and silent. The path ahead is familiar, yet it feels entirely new, as though he is navigating a world subtly transformed. Standing in the heart of the chum bucket, he takes one final moment to survey the space around him. The machines are dormant, resting like slumbering giants in the gentle darkness. The screens emit only the faintest glow from standby lights, casting soft hues that blur into the surrounding shadows. Even the mechanical hum of the restaurant's infrastructure has faded into a barely perceptible background vibration, one that feels soothing rather than distracting. It is comforting, in an odd way, to be surrounded by the stillness of the place he has built, a place that has so often been the stage for his frustrations, but now seems to cradle him gently as he commits to one more try. His thoughts drift briefly through the memories of years spent in this environment, each moment of failure accumulating like sediment on the ocean floor. But tonight, he no longer feels buried beneath it. Tonight, those memories feel distant, softened, their sharp edges worn down by time and a newfound calm. This serenity is foreign to him, yet he does not fight it. He allows it to guide him. When he finally steps outside, the ocean greets him with a soft current that brushes past him in a slow, rhythmic pattern, almost like a welcoming gesture. The world feels cooler, clearer, and more expansive than he remembers. The path toward the Krusty Krab stretches ahead, familiar yet transformed by the hush of the night. He moves steadily, feeling the sand shift in gentle waves beneath his tiny form. The bioluminescent glimmers of distant plankton clouds create faint traces of light that drift through the water, adding an almost dreamlike quality to the scene. Coral formations cast long, softened shadows on the sea floor. Seaweed gardens sway with unhurried grace, their movements reminiscent of a slow lullaby. Everything feels calm, as though even the ocean itself is dozing lightly. This environment is the opposite of what he has always associated with his schemes. Usually the night feels tense, filled with the pressure of sneaking, rushing, and second-guessing. But tonight, As he moves through this tranquil landscape, the calm seems to wrap around him. He begins to understand something he never allowed himself to consider. The quiet is not working against him. It is supporting him, steadying him. For once, the world is not pushing him toward hurried mistakes. Instead, it is guiding him with soft currents and dim lights, giving him the rare gift of time. When the silhouette of the Krusty Krab comes into view, it rises from the sand like a resting giant. Its wooden exterior looks gentler under the moonlit water, the edges softened by darkness, rather than defined by the busy activity of daylight hours. The restaurant appears peaceful, almost vulnerable, wrapped in the serene stillness of the night. Plankton observes it from a distance, taking in the unusual experience of seeing the building without its bustling energy, without customers shuffling in and out, without the sound of patties sizzling on the grill. In this state, the Krusty Krab feels like a relic from a long-forgotten story, a silent monument holding secrets deep within its walls. The years of failures flood back to him, not in a painful rush, but in a soft wave of reflection. Every previous attempt felt frantic, noisy, and doomed by its own velocity. He always rushed, always panicked, always lunged toward opportunity with a mind clouded by urgency. Tonight is different. Tonight he approaches quietly, almost reverently, as though he is not merely stealing, but uncovering something significant, something that has shaped his entire life's trajectory. There is no triumphant music playing in his mind, no harsh determination pushing him forward. Instead, a gentle understanding fills him, a sense that perhaps this moment is less about taking something and more about confronting the weight of his own pursuit. He slips beneath the structure, moving through small openings shaped by time, erosion, and the natural settling of the wooden beams. Every detail feels familiar, yet softened by the night's tranquility. The sand beneath the building is cooler, shaded from the faint moonlight. The water moves slowly here, caught in gentle eddies that circle lazily before drifting back into the open ocean. The quietness amplifies his awareness of every subtle sound, the muted shifting of sand, the distant crackle of tiny sea creatures nestled in coral crevices, the soft rustle of water against wood. It is not an ominous silence, but a comforting one. Reaching the small ventilation grate, he pauses. His past attempts to breach this area were always filled with frantic movements and rushed decisions. Tonight, he simply observes it quietly. The grate appears slightly aged, its screws worn down by time and salt. He secures his miniature tools with a calm, steady hand. The metal shifts softly, releasing a low, soothing scrape as he loosens the grate. No sudden noises break the tranquility. No unexpected movements disrupt his actions. The entire process feels almost ceremonial, as though he is performing a ritual he has prepared for endlessly. Inside, the vent provides a narrow but navigable path. Plankton moves through it with a sense of familiarity and patience. The lingering scent of grilled patties and warm buns drifts through the passage, gently reminding him of the goal ahead. But tonight, the smell does not fill him with the usual frantic desire to seize the prize. Instead, it coaxes him forward in a way that feels natural and unrushed. His memories drift back to the countless times he imagined this journey, all the frantic energy he wasted trying to outsmart obstacles that he himself created by rushing. Now, the journey feels smoother, more aligned with the quiet rhythm of the night. When he emerges into the kitchen, he is greeted by darkness that feels peaceful rather than foreboding. The faint silvery glow of moonlit water streams through the porthole windows, casting gentle patterns across the tiled floor. Every pot, pan, and appliance sits motionless, enveloped in the same sense of rest that permeates the entire ocean. He stands for a moment, letting the quiet wash over him. This is a place he has always viewed as hostile territory, a battleground where he repeatedly faced defeat. But now, in this moment, the kitchen feels almost inviting, like a stage illuminated softly for the quiet climax of a long, winding story. He approaches the safe with a calm confidence he has never felt before. The structure rises before him like a guardian monument, solid and silent. Yet it no longer feels impossible. He understands its mechanisms, its weaknesses, its historical place in his long pursuit. He carefully climbs onto a small ledge, presses his body against the cool metal surface, and begins unlocking the safe with deliberate precision. The sound of the tumblers shifting is gentle, almost rhythmic. The metal responds to his movements smoothly, as though acknowledging the years he has dedicated to understanding it. When the final mechanism clicks into place and the safe door loosens, he pauses. This is the closest he has ever been to the heart of his obsession. But even now, at the tipping point of success, the night keeps him calm. There is no sudden spike of adrenaline, no erratic movements. Instead, he feels a slow, warm sense of fulfillment spreading through him, a realization that this moment is less about the outcome and more about finally reaching the center of a dream he has chased for so long. As the safe door opens and the interior glow spills gently onto his face, he sees it, the formula, resting on a small shelf as though waiting for him. He steps inside without rushing, almost reverently, and reaches for the paper. The moment his hand touches it, a deep stillness settles inside him, merging with the calm of the ocean around him. It is a stillness he has never felt before, one that carries not the shock of victory, but the soothing release of a burden finally lifted. He has not yet read the formula. He has not yet fled the kitchen. He has not yet changed anything about the future. But in this quiet moment, holding the paper that shaped every year of his ambition, he feels an unmistakable truth settle into his mind. Everything, from this point forward, will be different. The night embraces him. The ocean holds its breath. And Plankton, for the first time in his long pursuit, simply allows himself to feel the calm of success before the world begins to shift. In the quiet hours before the attempt, long before Plankton slipped into the night and moved toward the Krusty Krab, the plan itself had taken shape, slowly, carefully, like a sand sculpture built grain by grain. For years, Plankton had crafted thousands of strategies that always teetered between brilliance and chaos. His mind had been a restless sea of inventions, calculations, last-minute improvisations, and grand declarations of certain success. Yet every attempt dissolved into failure, leaving behind the lingering taste of frustration and humiliation. The cycle was endless, each idea rising sharply with promise and falling just as quickly beneath the weight of miscalculation. But this time had been different from the very beginning. The plan had not arrived with the usual spark of frantic inspiration or the impulsive urge to outdo Mr. Krabs in a single dramatic gesture. Instead, it emerged slowly, organically, during the quiet moments between schemes, when Plankton allowed his mind to settle. For the first time in years, he began to look not for complexity, but for simplicity. He stopped designing machines that roared, or alarms that shrieked, or traps that snapped. He stopped imagining dramatic confrontations, chaotic escapes, or flashy triumphs. Instead, he asked himself a question he had never truly considered. What if the key to success was gentleness rather than force, patience rather than pressure, quiet rather than spectacle? That question changed everything. In the dim interior of the chum bucket, surrounded by the hum of cooling machines and the faint shimmer of screens powering down for the night, Plankton began building the framework of a plan that felt more like a meditative ritual than a scheme. He approached each step with calm thoughtfulness, allowing the simplicity of the night to guide his decisions rather than the noise of ambition. The plan needed to be silent, smooth, and natural, something that blended seamlessly with the stillness of the ocean rather than disturbing it. His movements slowed, his mind eased, and with each passing day, the path forward became clearer. He began by studying the rhythms of the Krusty Krab, not just one day, but many. He observed the opening hours, the closing rituals, the quiet moments between rushes when the kitchen fell still. He watched the patterns of employees, not through the lens of rivalry, but through calm observation. SpongeBob's bursts of enthusiasm eventually tapered into soft evening tasks. Squidward's bored routine became predictable in its monotony. Even Mr. Krabs, so obsessed with guarding his formula, slipped into cycles of behavior shaped by habit and fatigue. And beneath it all, Plankton noticed tiny gaps, soft moments woven into the flow of each day. Moments where the restaurant was not alert, where everything slowed just enough to create opportunity. It struck him how different this form of planning felt. In the past, he had always focused on breaking through obstacles with brute force or elaborate contraptions. But this time, he saw the beauty of moving within the natural rhythm rather than against it. The soft places between actions became entry points. The quiet breaths between movements became windows of possibility. It was a kind of strategic serenity he had never attempted before. Next came the tools, crafted not in a frenzy, but with methodical care. He set aside the oversized robots, laser beams, suction devices, and explosive mechanisms that had dominated his past inventions. Instead, he focused on materials that were unobtrusive, light, silent. A small grappling device made of a flexible alloy that produced no clinks or metallic taps. A miniature cutting beam designed not for power but for subtlety, emitting no more than a soft shimmer of heat. A tiny container for storing the formula, cushioned to keep the paper perfectly flat. Every piece was tested multiple times under the lowest settings, ensuring absolute quiet. Everything about the plan reflected restraint, as though Plankton had finally understood that the ocean favored the patient and punished the reckless. He practiced the movements in his own space, navigating around the chum bucket as though it were the Krusty Krab. Instead of rushing or stumbling with excitement, he slowed his breathing, slowed his steps, and focused on matching the calm flow of the water around him. He trained himself to move like a drifting shell rather than a creature on a mission. In those rehearsals, something unexpected began to change inside him. His mind, once cluttered with bursts of frantic creativity, began to clear. He found a rhythm that felt natural and comforting. For the first time in years, he spent hours working on a plan without feeling overwhelmed by his own ambition. This clarity also brought with it a deeper sense of reflection. As he prepared, Plankton began to think about why the formula had consumed him for so long. He re-examined each past failure, not with bitterness, but with curiosity. Each attempt had been shaped by impatience, by the desire to force the world into giving him what he wanted. He had never stopped to consider whether all the noise he created was the very thing that brought him down each time. The formula had become a symbol of everything he lacked, everything he pursued, everything he believed would validate his existence. But now, in the stillness of his preparation, the formula felt less like a trophy and more like a milestone in a journey he had been walking blindly for years. Understanding that shifted his mindset entirely. He no longer felt the frantic desperation to win at any cost. He no longer felt the need to prove himself through dramatic triumph. Instead, he simply felt ready to complete something he had been shaping for most of his life. With that readiness came peace. He studied the blueprint of the Krusty Krab both physically and mentally, memorizing every vent, every seam in the wood, every slight tilt in the floor caused by years of settling. He traced the path from the exterior to the kitchen hundreds of times in his mind, making sure each turn was locked into instinct. The safe itself became less intimidating with every moment he spent analyzing its mechanism. He knew its clicks, its pauses, the subtle vibration that signaled a successful alignment of tumblers. He had built his life around understanding this safe, yet he had always approached it with the wrong energy. Now, with patience guiding his hands, he felt as if the safe had been waiting for him to slow down long enough to understand it. As the plan solidified, Plankton also prepared emotionally. For years, he had been fueled by anger, envy, and the sting of disappointment. These emotions had clouded his judgment and pushed him toward hurried decisions. The quiet night spent shaping this new plan offered him the space to acknowledge how heavy that emotional load had become. He reflected on the endless cycle of failures not as personal shortcomings, but as lessons carved into the years behind him. By the time the plan was finalized, He realized that he had shed most of the bitterness he once carried. In its place, he found a gentle kind of resolve, something much more sustainable than the burning intensity he had relied on before. His final night of preparation was marked by an unusual calmness. The chum bucket seemed to glow faintly in the soft light of dormant machinery, casting smooth shadows along the walls. The silence of the building soothed him, reminding him of the serene underwater world that surrounded him. He moved through his checklist not with anxious energy, but with the smooth precision of someone who trusts himself fully. Each item he inspected felt right. Each detail was in place. There was nothing left to adjust or rethink. The world outside was settling into its nighttime rhythm, signaling that the moment was approaching. Before setting out, he allowed himself a long moment to simply breathe. The small, steady expansion of his body in the cool water, the gentle contraction as he exhaled, the subtle sway of the water around him, all of it grounded him in the present. There was no sense of impending chaos, only readiness. When the moment arrived, the plan was not something he carried like a heavy burden. It was something that existed within him naturally, a sequence of movements and decisions that flowed with the current rather than against it. His tools sat lightly across his body, silent companions rather than cumbersome machines. His thoughts drifted smoothly, unburdened by fear of failure. He stepped outside and began moving through the ocean that felt unusually kind that night. As he approached the Krusty Krab, there was no rush to enact the plan, no frantic anticipation. Instead, he felt a sense of inevitability, as though everything he had survived, learned, and practiced had been guiding him toward this calm convergence of strategy, opportunity. The plan, once a chaotic storm of ideas, had become something elegant. It was neither grand nor dramatic. It was a precise alignment of patience, observation, and intention. It was a reflection of everything Plankton had become through years of trial and error. And as he prepared to step into the execution phase, the ocean itself seemed to cradle him gently, as though acknowledging that the plan was finally in harmony with the world around him. There is a kind of ritual that takes shape in the hours before an important moment. A quiet choreography made of small movements, silent adjustments, and the steady settling of intention. For Plankton, the night before his infiltration took on this gentle ritualistic quality, as though every action he performed were part of a sequence crafted not only to ready his tools, but to align his mind with the calmness of the ocean around him. The soft currents that drifted through the chum bucket that evening carried with them a sense of slow anticipation, a steady rhythm that Plankton allowed himself to match. The entire restaurant seemed to fall into a hush, as though it too had learned the value of patience. He began by examining each tool with a precision shaped by years of experience, but tempered tonight by an unusual tranquility. The grappling device, now refined into a lightweight, compact structure, rested on his workbench with a muted metallic sheen. It had taken many versions, tests, and failures to reach this point, but now it felt like an extension of his own thoughts. Simple, smooth, reliable. He traced the edges of its frame with a steady hand, checking for any irregularities or weaknesses. Every corner, every joint, every hinge was designed for silent use. Nothing needed improvement. Nothing felt rushed. Everything was ready. Next, he inspected the small energy cutter, designed not for brute force, but for subtle precision. Unlike the loud, unstable machines of his past attempts, this device emitted no sparks, no heat that could scorch metal, no vibrations that could alert anyone nearby. Instead, it gave off a faint, controlled glow when activated, its beams sliding across surfaces like a quiet whisper of light. Plankton tested it gently, watching as it traced invisible lines across an old piece of scrap metal without leaving any sign of disturbance. The smoothness of the tool matched the smoothness of his plan. It calmed him to know that the technology he carried would not betray him with sudden noise or unpredictable behavior. After the tools came the container for the formula. It was a surprisingly simple object, crafted from a flexible material that protected whatever rested inside it from bending or moisture. The interior lining had been chosen with meticulous care to ensure that the paper would remain perfectly preserved, lying flat as though it were still inside the safety of its guarded vault. Plankton ran his hand along its surface, appreciating the softness of the material and how easily it folded into a compact shape. It was light, almost weightless, yet dependable. The container represented more than a practical necessity. It symbolized the importance of treating the object of his obsession with respect, something he had not always done in his frantic past attempts. As he moved through his preparation, Plankton felt the weight of years settling gently around him, not as a burden, but as a quiet reminder of how far he had come. He thought back to the versions of himself who had rushed, panicked, and leapt into action without reflection. Those versions had been driven by urgency, driven by the fear of missing opportunities, driven by the need to prove something to the world. But tonight, the version of himself who moved through the chum bucket was someone transformed. He was not rushing toward victory. He was walking calmly into a long-awaited moment of clarity. The environment reflected his state of mind. The chum bucket, usually filled with the hum of machinery or the occasional clang of an invention being tested, had embraced a rare stillness. The walls, bathed in the faint glow of standby lights, appeared softer than usual. The shadows, stretching across the floor, seemed to breathe with the gentle sway of the water. Everything in the room felt slow, quiet, and steady. Plankton found comfort in this ambience. He allowed himself to soak in the atmosphere, drawing strength from the tranquility. He moved toward the small storage compartment where he kept his notes and observations. Decades of attempts had produced countless sketches, diagrams, maps, and calculations. Some were messy and chaotic, scribbled in moments of desperation. Others were detailed and elegant, born from nights of intense focus. He sifted through them with a kind of tender nostalgia, letting memories surface without judgment. Every failure that once stung now felt softened by time and perspective. Each attempt, no matter how misguided or flawed, had contributed to the evolution of the plan he would execute tonight. Among the papers was a small folder containing the final blueprint of his infiltration route. Plankton examined it with a steady gaze. The path from the exterior of the Krusty Krab to the interior of the kitchen had been mapped out in careful strokes. The ventilation shaft measurements were accurate. The timing of the restaurant's closing patterns was precise. The layout of the kitchen, including the position of the safe, had been studied so thoroughly that he could navigate it blind if needed. He had measured, memorized, and rehearsed every detail. The blueprint felt less like a map and more like a familiar memory. Satisfied, he set the folder aside and turned his attention to the interior of the chum bucket once more. The night around him was growing deeper, the water outside darker and more serene. The stillness carried with it an almost meditative quality. He allowed his thoughts to wander freely, letting them drift like loose sand in the current. He reflected on the emotional weight of the mission. For so long, the formula had represented the solution to everything he believed was wrong with his life. He had convinced himself that possession of it would change everything instantly, that it would bring him success, recognition, and fulfillment. But as he prepared tonight, he understood something very different. The formula was no longer about proving himself or defeating Mr. Krabs. It was no longer a symbol of envy or competition. Instead, it had become a milestone in a journey that led him back to himself. The act of obtaining the formula, regardless of what followed, felt like the completion of a long chapter rather than the beginning of a conquest. This shift allowed him to approach the mission not with hunger or desperation, but with acceptance and purpose. With his tools ready and his mind settled, Plankton reviewed the timing of his departure. The ocean outside followed a predictable rhythm. The evening currents would soon reach their lowest point, offering the calmest path toward the Krusty Krab. The lights of Bikini Bottom had dimmed to their nighttime glow, and the faint silhouettes of sleeping homes dotted the landscape. In this peaceful environment, there would be minimal movement, minimal sound, and minimal risk of detection. The timing felt perfect. He performed a final inspection of the chum bucket's main floor, not out of necessity, but out of habit. The familiarity of the space brought him comfort. The metallic structures that once towered over him with cold indifference now felt like quiet companions. They had witnessed countless attempts, countless failures, and countless reinventions of the same dream. Tonight, they simply stood in silence, offering him the space he needed to embrace the moment. As he moved toward the exit, Plankton felt an unexpected warmth rising within him, an emotion that blended relief, anticipation, and a quiet sense of closure. He had waited for this night for most of his life, yet now that it had arrived, he found himself embracing it with gentle calm rather than electrifying excitement. His breathing remained steady. His thoughts remained clear. Nothing felt rushed or chaotic. Before stepping into the open water, he paused one last time to reflect on the journey that had led him to this moment. He allowed himself to acknowledge the strength it took to continue pursuing something for so long despite repeated setbacks. He recognized the resilience hidden within each failed attempt. He understood now that every effort, no matter how small or flawed, had been a piece of the path leading him here. When he finally crossed the threshold into the quiet ocean night, the water embraced him with a cool, steady flow. The soft currents brushed against him like gentle encouragement. The landscape stretched before him in shades of deep blue and muted green, illuminated only by the faint glow of distant bioluminescent particles drifting through the water like scattered stars. The world around him seemed to hum with a slow, peaceful rhythm. He began moving forward, carrying his tools and his resolve with ease. The sand beneath him shifted in smooth waves as he drifted toward the heart of his long pursuit. The preparation was complete. The night was ready. And for the first time, so was he. The ocean at night possesses a kind of serenity that is rarely matched during the day. A slow pulse that drifts through every current, every shadow, every contour of the seabed. As Plankton set out from the chum bucket and entered the vast expanse stretching between his home and the Krusty Krab, he found himself enveloped in this deep stillness. The water around him was cool, steady, and gentle, flowing in smooth, undisturbed waves that guided his movement with quiet ease. The muted glow of bioluminescent particles flickered in the distance, creating a scattered constellation that shifted and swayed with the tide. Each shimmering light served as a silent companion, offering soft illumination as he drifted forward. The journey itself was familiar in its layout, but unfamiliar in feeling. Plankton had traveled this route countless times before, yet never with such an extraordinary calm residing within him. Previously, he had always approached these waters with frantic energy, darting across the ocean floor with hurried strokes driven by urgency and obsession. Tonight, however, his pace was unhurried. His movement was steady and measured, and the quiet rhythm of the water resonated with a sense of purpose that did not rely on haste. Every motion felt deliberate, every shift intentional. He allowed himself to glide rather than rush, guided by the soft push of the current. As he moved farther from the chum bucket, the landscape around him changed in subtle gradients. The sandy ground grew darker, the water deepened in hue, and patches of tall seagrass swayed gently as he passed through them. The blades brushed lightly against him, creating delicate ripples in the water. These long stretches of grass formed natural corridors that seemed to welcome him into their fold, their movements slow and harmonious, as though acknowledging the importance of his journey. The rhythmic sway provided a soothing backdrop, a reminder that even the smallest organisms of the ocean lived within a pattern that knew patience and grace. While Plankton moved, he allowed his thoughts to drift freely, carried along by the effortless momentum of his body. He reflected on the years of attempts that had brought him here, letting memories rise one by one, like drifting shells, carried upward by a gentle current. There had been nights when he had crossed these very waters, filled with frustration, burdened by the sting of yet another failed plan. He remembered moments when he had returned home angry, disheartened, or exhausted, convinced that success would forever remain out of reach. The ocean had witnessed all of these moments, absorbing each failure into its vastness, and returning nothing but silence in response. Yet tonight, the ocean responded differently. It felt alive in a quiet, supportive way, as though it recognized the shift in Plankton's intentions. His mission, once driven by desperation, had become softened by clarity. This clarity resonated through the water, calming him further as he traveled. Each pulse of the current seemed to align with his breathing, creating a gentle dialogue between his inner calm and the vast environment around him. For the first time, the journey did not feel lonely. It felt unified, as though the ocean itself accompanied him. As he moved deeper into the night, Plankton reached the first landmark of his journey, a small ridge of smooth coral that rose from the sand like a gentle crest. The ridge had served as a checkpoint for him in the past, a reminder of the halfway point between his home and the Krusty Krab. Tonight, the coral appeared softer than usual, bathed in the dim glow of tiny bioluminescent organisms clinging to its surface. Their light was faint, but steady, casting a tranquil shimmer over the structure. Plankton paused momentarily, not out of caution, but to absorb the atmosphere around him. The stillness of the ridge offered a moment of reflection. He considered how much emotional weight this mission had carried over the years, how the desire to possess the secret formula had shaped so much of his life. In that quiet pause, he acknowledged the magnitude of this journey, not for what it promised to deliver, but for what it represented within himself. He recognized that he was no longer chasing something out of emptiness or envy. Instead, he was completing a chapter of his existence that had defined him for far too long. The coral ridge, in its gentle luminescence, seemed to honor this realization. When he resumed his path, he did so with even greater ease. The ocean floor sloped downward in a gentle descent, and Plankton allowed himself to follow its natural curvature. The water here felt slightly cooler, refreshing against his skin. The darkness deepened, but the bioluminescent glow from drifting organisms and distant sea flora continued to provide soft illumination. Each glowing cluster appeared and disappeared slowly, creating an ever-changing display of calm, fading light. These subtle lights gave the impression of drifting through a quiet dream, where the boundaries of reality blurred into soft hues and floating patterns. As the Krusty Krab grew closer, Plankton became increasingly aware of the faint silhouettes marking the outskirts of Bikini Bottom. The shapes of familiar buildings appeared like distant shadows against the dim seafloor. Their outlines were muted and gentle, softened by the darkness and quiet. The city was asleep, with no signs of movement or noise. Even the water around the structures seemed more still than usual, as though respecting the collective hush that had settled over the town. Plankton slowed his pace slightly, taking time to observe the calmness of the sleeping city. In previous attempts, he had always approached this area with a racing heartbeat, his mind flooded with strategies and uncertainties. Tonight, however, he found himself appreciating the peacefulness of Bikini Bottom. The town that had often served as the backdrop for his failures now felt serene, detached from the conflicts of the day. Its houses, its lamps, its quiet streets, all radiated a sense of stillness that matched the tranquility of the ocean around him. For once, he felt no resentment toward it. Instead, he felt a surprising softness. The Krusty Krab lay ahead, its outline faint but unmistakable. The familiar structure, once a symbol of countless frustrations, appeared calm and unguarded in the quiet darkness. Its roof curved gently, its windows dimmed, and the surrounding sand rested undisturbed. Even its iconic sign cast no glow, blending seamlessly into the peaceful landscape. Despite knowing what awaited within its walls, Plankton felt no spike of adrenaline. Instead, a deep, steady warmth spread through him, a sense of calm assurance that matched the stillness of the night. Before approaching the building directly, Plankton circled around its quiet perimeter. The water here was slightly warmer, influenced by the protection offered by the restaurant's structure. The sand beneath him felt smooth and undisturbed, untouched by recent footsteps or activity. It was as though time had paused in this area, waiting patiently for his arrival. Plankton absorbed the moment carefully, letting the gentle environment ease any lingering tension within him. He examined the shadows cast by the building, noticing how they stretched and softened along the ocean floor. The stillness of the scene invited a kind of meditative calm, as though the ocean itself encouraged him to take a slow breath and ground himself before the next step. The mission ahead required precision and awareness, but it also required a steady heart. Tonight, he had both. As he hovered near the rear side of the building, he revisited the blueprint in his mind. The ventilation shaft he planned to enter lay just above a small outcropping of rock. The shaft's small opening was nearly invisible in the darkness, blending seamlessly with the shadows. He had memorized its exact dimensions and position through years of observation, and now, seeing it in person, he felt a sense of reassuring familiarity. Everything was precisely where it should be. Nothing surprised him. Nothing disturbed the calm within him. Before ascending toward the shaft, he paused once more, allowing himself to feel the moment fully. He acknowledged the enormity of what he was about to do, not as a burden, but as a significant turning point. The calm surrounding him felt almost ceremonial, as though the entire ocean had gathered in quiet witness to his journey. He let the water flow around him, carrying with it the soft hum of the currents. In that hum, Plankton heard a kind of encouragement, a reminder that he was not the frantic figure he once was. He was steady, prepared, and grounded. With deliberate ease, he rose toward the ventilation shaft, guiding himself upward along the building's smooth surface. The gentle texture of the wall brushed lightly against him as he ascended. The water grew even stiller as he neared the small opening, creating a sense of suspended quiet that seemed to hold the entire moment in place. There was no rush, no panic, no second guessing, only the soundless motion of entering the next stage of his journey. As Plankton reached the entrance of the ventilation shaft and prepared to slip inside, the calmness surrounding him deepened further. The journey across the ocean had been a quiet cleansing, a gentle preparation that brought him to the threshold not only of the building, but of the culmination of years of effort and emotion. The water behind him remained tranquil, stretching back toward the chum bucket in a long, peaceful expanse. Ahead of him lay the silent interior of the Krusty Krab, waiting patiently in the dark. With steady resolve and a heart settled by the softness of the ocean night, Plankton crossed into the shadowed opening, leaving behind the vast calm of the sea as he moved forward into the quiet depths of his long-awaited mission. The ventilation shaft was narrow, but perfectly suited to Plankton's small form, a silent passageway that guided him deeper into the heart of the Krusty Krab. The air was still and cool, carrying faint echoes of the kitchen beyond, the subtle scent of frying oil, warm buns, and the faintest hint of seaweed. Each breath he drew was measured and slow, syncing with the gentle rhythm of the currents that occasionally pushed faint wisps of water through the shaft. There was no rush, no panic, no feeling of urgency, only a calm awareness of every motion and every breath. He moved with complete attention, letting the soft, continuous hum of the ocean and the muted sounds of the kitchen guide him forward as naturally as the tide guiding a drifting shell. The entrance to the main kitchen came into view gradually, shaped by the shadows of low light filtering through the porthole windows. The safe that contained the Krabby Patty formula rested in a familiar spot, its solid metallic form grounded in the dimly illuminated space. It had been years since he had approached it so closely without interference, and the familiarity brought with it a sense of comfort, a reminder of every lesson learned through countless previous attempts. The safe itself, once a symbol of frustration and unattainable success, now appeared serene and almost welcoming, waiting to be acknowledged rather than feared. Plankton paused briefly to absorb the atmosphere, the tranquility of the night settling around him like a gentle blanket, filling him with a steady sense of anticipation rather than agitation. His tools, carefully prepared and adjusted in the quiet hours before his departure, were within easy reach. The small grappling device rested lightly against his body. The cutter, calibrated for silent precision, glimmered faintly in the soft light, and the cushioned container for the formula lay ready, its interior awaiting the delicate paper it was meant to hold. Every component had been chosen with care, tested in the calm and stillness of countless trials, ensuring that no unexpected noise or vibration could betray his presence. Even as he adjusted the grip of his hands, the movement felt smooth and deliberate, perfectly aligned with the slow, intentional pace that had defined the journey to this moment. The methodical approach that had guided him thus far now carried him across the last small distance to the safe. The surface of the floor beneath him was cool, smooth, and unmoving, responding silently to his careful touch. He placed his small hands on the edges of the safe, feeling the solid, dependable metal beneath his fingertips. The tactile sensation grounded him, reminding him of the countless hours of observation and preparation that had led to this night. There was no thrill, no panic, no frantic surge of adrenaline, only the quiet affirmation of readiness and patience. The world beyond this moment had slowed in perfect synchronization with him. As he began to manipulate the tumblers, he did so with deliberate care. Each rotation was slow, intentional, accompanied by the faint click of the mechanism inside. The sound was subtle, almost imperceptible against the soft, enveloping hush of the ocean and the distant hum of the currents. He allowed himself to focus entirely on the sensations, the slight resistance of the tumblers, the smooth movement of metal against metal, the gentle vibration that signaled a correct alignment. Every click, every adjustment became a meditation, a rhythm that matched the quiet flow of his own breath. Years of failed attempts had honed this motion, each past misstep now serving as a guide toward absolute precision. Time seemed to stretch and fold in this moment. What in another circumstance might have felt rushed or tense, instead felt expansive and deliberate. Every fraction of a second was acknowledged, every subtle sound and movement carefully attended to. The process was slow and unhurried, a dance of thought, muscle memory, and the quiet cooperation of a mechanism long studied. The tumblers shifted into place, one by one, until finally a small release indicated that the safe had yielded its secret. The door, heavy yet unmoving in the past, gave way under his careful touch, opening smoothly without a single sound that could echo into the kitchen beyond. The faint light spilling from the opening illuminated the interior and revealed the paper resting in perfect stillness. The sight of the formula struck him not as a rush of exhilaration but as a gentle acknowledgement of culmination. The paper, modest and fragile, lay flat against the surface, perfectly preserved and waiting as though it had known he would arrive. His hands moved carefully to lift it, feeling the subtle texture of the paper beneath his fingertips, the smooth surface conveying a sense of quiet permanence. In that moment, every year of effort, every failed attempt, every moment of frustration and hope merged into a problem's singular, expansive awareness. The formula was no longer a distant goal or a tantalizing mystery. It was present, tangible, and undeniably real. Holding the formula in his hands, Plankton experienced an unexpected wave of emotion. It was not the frantic triumph he had imagined during restless nights of planning, nor was it the intense, burning satisfaction of finally conquering a long-held rival. Instead, it was a soft, immersive realization that years of pursuit had led him to this quiet moment of completion. There was a profound stillness in the achievement, a recognition of the journey itself rather than the reward alone. He felt a deep sense of peace, a recognition that this act, which had occupied so much of his life, was now fulfilled with the gentleness and patience that had been absent from past attempts. He allowed himself to linger with the formula for several moments, feeling the weight of its presence without rushing to conceal it or transport it. The calm of the night, the steady currents, and the muted shadows of the kitchen all combined to create an atmosphere of reflective satisfaction. Plankton's mind, once consumed by frantic calculations and the relentless pursuit of success, now flowed smoothly with quiet appreciation of the completion of a long and meticulous journey. Each subtle sensation, the slight hum of the water, the soft glint of light on metal surfaces, The gentle pressure of the paper against his fingers seemed magnified, each detail acknowledged fully in the serenity of the moment. The process of securing the formula into its protective container was deliberate and unhurried. He laid it carefully inside the cushioned interior, smoothing it flat with gentle, precise movements. Every fold, every corner, every subtle detail was attended to with calm attention, ensuring that the paper remained unaltered and perfectly preserved. In this careful handling, Plankton found an unexpected sense of intimacy with the object that had defined so much of his life. It was no longer merely a prize or a symbol of conquest. It had become a witness to his persistence, a marker of years spent in quiet, determined focus. Once the formula was secured, he allowed himself a slow, steadying breath. The night seemed to deepen around him, the currents carrying a soft resonance that mirrored the stillness within. The safe remained open for only a moment longer, its heavy door a silent observer of the culmination of long practice and patient movement. Plankton stepped back gently, ensuring that nothing in his departure would disturb the equilibrium of the space. Each movement was calculated to maintain the hush that had guided him thus far, allowing the night to continue its quiet watch over the completed act. The moment was complete. The formula, once so elusive, was now held securely. The journey across the ocean, the careful preparation, the study of the building and the timing of its routines, the countless rehearsals, all of it had converged in this calm and deliberate accomplishment. There was no sudden rush of victory, no noise of triumph, no external recognition. The quiet itself was acknowledgement enough. The achievement existed fully in the stillness, unadorned and complete. Plankton's pulse, his breathing, and even the soft pressure of the surrounding water all reflected the singular truth of possession achieved through patience and careful alignment with the environment. In the silence of the kitchen, he lingered for just a few more moments, allowing the awareness of what had been completed to sink deeply into his consciousness. The years of longing and striving seemed to settle, like sediment finally at rest on the ocean floor. He did not feel the compulsion to rush, to flee, or to immediately test the formula. Instead, he simply existed in the peaceful confirmation of his long-sought goal. Each subtle detail of the environment, the soft light, the muted colors, the gentle hum of the currents, seemed magnified in its significance, bearing witness to the quiet triumph of patient determination. Finally, Plankton prepared to leave the kitchen, moving with the same deliberate care that had guided him throughout the infiltration. Every step was measured, every adjustment intentional, ensuring that the stillness of the night remained undisturbed. The ventilation shaft awaited, the familiar pathway back to the open water, offering a continuation of the calm, reflective journey. The ocean beyond remained serene, the currents gentle, and the scattered bioluminescence soft and consistent. The world outside the crusty crab mirrored the calm he carried within, allowing the journey to continue smoothly toward the moment of return and the gentle contemplation of what possession of the formula would mean in the days to follow. The ventilation shaft welcomed him again, narrow and quiet, guiding Plankton back toward the open expanse of the ocean. The formula rested safely within its cushioned container, a small treasure held gently against his chest. The air inside the shaft was cool and still, the faint echoes of distant currents providing a subtle rhythm to his movements. There was no rush, no panic, no sense of threat. The mission, once fraught with tension and uncertainty, now unfolded in a calm, deliberate pace, each step measured and aligned with the quiet flow of the ocean. The walls of the shaft pressed gently against him as he glided, supporting his movement rather than obstructing it. He allowed himself to focus entirely on the rhythm of his body, the light, the gentle pressure of water, and the soft, steady beat of the currents. Outside, the ocean remained serene, stretching endlessly in muted shades of deep blue and green. The scattered glow of bioluminescent particles drifted lazily, forming soft, flickering constellations that illuminated the path ahead. The sand shifted in gentle ripples beneath him, carrying the traces of distant sea creatures moving slowly through the depths. The world around him seemed to participate in the quiet celebration of his success, offering calm continuity as he navigated the familiar path with an unfamiliar sense of serenity. Each movement felt connected, purposeful, and unhurried, a reflection of the preparation that had led him to this point. The journey back toward the outer currents of Bikini Bottom was not without its subtle challenges. Occasionally, a drifting piece of debris or the sudden sway of seaweed required a careful adjustment, a slight change of course that maintained the quiet flow of motion. Plankton responded with precision, his movements smooth and unobtrusive, ensuring that no disturbance echoed through the surrounding water. Each minor obstacle was met not with frustration but with gentle attention, a reminder that path to success had always been as much about patience and awareness as about skill. The world, in all its quiet imperfection, became part of the choreography rather than a source of chaos. The soft hum of the currents carried him past familiar landmarks, the ridge of coral, the swaying patches of seagrass, and the gentle undulations of the sandy ocean floor. Each feature had been noted countless times before, yet tonight, seen through the lens of calm accomplishment, they appeared softer, more forgiving. The journey was no longer simply a test of agility or cunning, but a meditation on movement, awareness, and the gentle assertion of presence within the ocean's vastness. The act of carrying the formula, once a burden heavy with urgency, now felt like a smooth, flowing ritual, a continuous alignment of intention and environment. At one point, a small surge of water pushed against him unexpectedly, caused by a distant current shifting across the seabed. In a past attempt, such a movement might have sparked panic or hurried improvisation, threatening to undo everything he had worked to achieve. But tonight, Plankton allowed the water to pass around him, adjusting his body slowly, intuitively, without breaking the rhythm of his motion. The surge became part of the journey rather than an obstacle, a reminder that the world is never entirely predictable, and yet, with patience and awareness, it can be navigated smoothly. He felt a quiet appreciation for the unpredictability, a sense that even challenges could be woven into the calm of the moment without fracturing it. Further along, the familiar shadow of the chum bucket came into view, dim and soft under the muted glow of distant bioluminescence. The sight of his home base, usually associated with preparation, work, and occasional frustration, now offered reassurance. Its presence marked the nearing completion of this first stage of the mission, a gentle anchor in the expansive underwater space. Plankton allowed himself to notice the details, the faint shimmer of metal, the smooth lines of the structure, the subtle echoes of the currents around it. Everything appeared aligned with the serenity he carried inside, reinforcing the sense that this journey, once filled with tension and uncertainty, had become a movement of gentle, deliberate purpose. The approach to the chum bucket required careful navigation through a series of soft, shifting sandbanks. Each movement was calculated to avoid stirring clouds of sediment, which could obscure his path or leave traces in the surrounding water. He adjusted the angle of his fins slowly, guiding himself with a smooth and precise flow. The sand beneath him yielded in quiet ripples, carrying away the faintest impression of his passage. The process was meditative, each motion contributing to a sense of harmony between his presence and the environment. The path, though familiar, felt newly alive, infused with the quiet awareness that had defined every step of this successful endeavor. Reaching the immediate perimeter of the chum bucket, he allowed a moment of pause to ensure that everything remained undisturbed. The soft dimness of the surrounding water seemed to magnify the quiet of the moment, and Plankton absorbed the atmosphere fully. There was no rush, no external urgency pressing upon him, only the subtle, continuous pulse of the currents and the muted glow of distant particles drifting lazily in the water. Every detail, each shadow, each ripple, each faint vibration was acknowledged in complete attention. The calm that had guided him this far had not faltered, and he felt it carry him smoothly into the final approach toward his sanctuary. Inside the chum bucket, he navigated past familiar machinery and soft metal surfaces, each one reflecting a history of long hours and patient preparation. The atmosphere of the interior, usually alive with humming and mechanical energy, now mirrored the quiet of the ocean around him. The machines rested as if in gentle slumber, their lines and surfaces softened in the subdued light. Plankton's movements were fluid, measured, and continuous, allowing the interior space to remain undisturbed. In the stillness, he sensed a subtle sense of validation, an acknowledgement that his journey, both outward and back, had maintained a rhythm of patience and respect for the environment that had carried him. The first subtle obstacle appeared as he attempted to position the formula securely within his temporary storage area, inside the chum bucket. A small current pushed against him unexpectedly, causing a slight tilt in the container. Where a past attempt might have led to frantic adjustment, he responded with smooth, controlled movements, allowing the current to dissipate naturally around him and carefully realigning the container without disturbing the contents. The delicate attention required for this simple act reinforced the importance of patience and awareness in this stage of the mission. Each minor correction became a continuation of the larger flow rather than a disruption, a reaffirmation that calm precision could navigate even the slightest disturbance. As the hours of the night deepened, Plankton allowed himself moments of reflection while ensuring the safekeeping of the formula. The quiet of the chum bucket, the gentle pulse of the surrounding currents, and the soft luminescence of the ocean coalesced into a perfect environment for contemplation. He considered the meaning of what had been achieved, the years of preparation and study that had led him to this moment, and the quiet satisfaction that accompanied a task completed without chaos or error. The soft stillness of the ocean mirrored the quiet triumph he experienced internally, reinforcing the realization that success did not need to announce itself loudly to exist fully. Even as he remained vigilant, the absence of pressure allowed him to notice the subtle beauty in the environment around him. Tiny particles of sediment floated slowly in the water, reflecting soft glimmers of light. Minute creatures moved delicately through the currents, undisturbed by his presence. The sand beneath the floor of the chum bucket shifted subtly with the rhythm of the ocean, creating patterns that were almost imperceptible yet calming in their continuous motion. The world felt alive in a gentle, sustaining way, a partner in the quiet culmination of long effort. Finally, the early hints of the approaching dawn began to alter the water outside the chum bucket. The ocean shifted gently, the currents taking on a slightly warmer hue as light began to filter through from the surface above. Plankton recognized this as the transition into a new phase of the night's mission, the moment to prepare for the next stage, where the formula's presence within his possession would begin to ripple into the life of the chum bucket and beyond. He felt a sense of readiness, a smooth confidence, carried not by urgency, but by the calm assurance born of preparation, patience, and meticulous attention. With the first stages complete, Plankton allowed a long, slow exhale, letting the tension of the night dissolve completely. The currents and particles of the ocean seemed to respond in kind, flowing around him in gentle acknowledgement. He had navigated the journey outward and back with precision, secured the formula with care, and maintained a profound calm throughout. The night had been a conduit for patience, reflection, and careful movement, and the first challenge of returning with the prize had been met without incident. Each sensation, the subtle hum of the water, the delicate light of drifting particles, the weight of the secured container, was fully present, anchoring him in a deep, reflective serenity. The night's quiet held him, the currents cradled him, and the chum bucket remained a calm haven at the center of it all. The first stage of escape, the careful and deliberate movement through the underwater world, was complete. Plankton, in possession of the formula, allowed the gentle rhythm of the ocean to carry him forward into the next stage. Each breath, each movement, each subtle sensation, a meditation on the patience, preparation, and quiet determination that had guided him to this moment. The chum bucket appeared in the distance like a quiet beacon, its familiar silhouette softened by the muted hues of the underwater night. Plankton glided through the currents with a calm precision that had been cultivated over hours of careful movement, each stroke of his fins deliberate, each adjustment in direction smooth and measured. The ocean seemed to cradle him in its gentle embrace, supporting the careful weight of the formula he carried. The small container pressed lightly against his chest, secure and undisturbed, its presence both tangible and symbolic. He allowed himself to feel the significance of the moment without urgency, letting the currents guide him as if they understood the importance of the completion of this stage of his journey. The waters surrounding the chum bucket were calm, and the soft glow of bioluminescent particles painted the landscape with subtle patterns of light. They drifted slowly, undisturbed, forming gentle constellations that flickered in rhythm with the undulating currents. Plankton moved through these luminous displays with quiet attention, feeling a deep sense of alignment between his movement and the flow of the ocean around him. Each motion seemed to echo the meticulous care and patience that had defined every step of the mission thus far. The familiar architecture of his home base emerged gradually from the darkened water, its angles softened by the refracted light and the gentle sway of the currents. There was no rush to enter, no anticipation of celebration, only the smooth continuity of arrival and presence. Upon reaching the perimeter, he allowed a moment of stillness before entering, acknowledging the journey completed and the calm stability of the environment that had carried him home. The soft currents around the exterior of the chum bucket seemed to ripple in gentle affirmation, and the shadows cast by the structure offered a sense of containment and security. As he moved closer, he felt a subtle sense of release, the long-held tension of preparation and anticipation dissolving into the serene comfort of familiarity. The ocean and the structure seemed to exist together in quiet harmony, each contributing to the balance that allowed this moment to feel complete and fully realized. Inside, the familiar interior of the chum bucket welcomed him with muted quietude. The machines, often loud and insistent, rested in gentle dormancy, their metallic surfaces reflecting the dim glow of standby lights. The hum of powered equipment was soft and steady, a subtle rhythm that complemented the natural pulse of the surrounding water. The interior, long associated with effort, persistence, and careful planning, now held the serenity of fulfillment. Plankton moved through it with gentle precision, aware of each step, each slight shift in balance, and the subtle interaction of his presence with the space around him. The environment mirrored his own calm state, providing a quiet sanctuary in which he could observe, reflect, and integrate the completion of his task. He reached the small compartment where he planned to secure the formula temporarily, a place he had prepared meticulously for the night. The container slipped easily into position, cradled by soft, cushioned supports, lying flat and undisturbed. Plankton took a slow, measured breath, allowing himself to feel the presence of the formula without rush or distraction. The years of effort, the countless failed attempts, and the patient accumulation of knowledge and skill converged in this singular moment, creating a profound sense of accomplishment. There was no need for celebration, no need for immediate action. The quiet was acknowledgement enough, and he allowed himself to absorb it fully. As he settled the container, he allowed his mind to drift gently through reflection. The act of obtaining the formula had been long anticipated, yet its arrival did not bring the chaotic exhilaration of imagined triumph. Instead, it brought an expansive, quiet realization of completion and the acknowledgement of years spent in careful preparation. Each step of the journey had been guided by patience, observation, and alignment with the natural rhythms of the ocean and the environment. The careful orchestration of movement, the subtle adjustments to currents and obstacles, and the attentive handling of tools and devices had produced a seamless convergence of intention and action. In this reflective state, he found an unexpected serenity, an awareness that the journey itself was as meaningful as the prize it had produced. Plankton observed the chum bucket around him, noting the soft shadows cast by machinery, the gentle interplay of light and water, and the subtle vibrations carried through the metal floors. Each detail, once overlooked in past attempts, now contributed to a holistic sense of calm and accomplishment. The interior felt alive with quiet energy, a soft acknowledgement of the presence and care that had guided the successful completion of the task. Even the smallest imperfections, previously sources of frustration, now appeared as integral elements of the environment, harmonizing with the rhythm of the night and the flow of the currents. The space seemed to breathe with him, creating an intimate connection between achievement, reflection, and environment. He allowed himself to sit near the compartment, maintaining gentle awareness of the formula's presence. The weight of it, both physical and symbolic, offered a grounding sense of permanence. It was no longer a distant, tantalizing goal, but a tangible object, secured and preserved, fully integrated into the calm space he had created. The act of holding and observing it was meditative, each gesture slow and deliberate, each movement attended to with careful attention. The gentle hum of machinery, the subtle vibrations of water, and the soft glow of the lights became part of a seamless symphony of quiet presence, reinforcing the sense of reflection and stillness that now filled the room. Time stretched in the gentle embrace of the night. The currents outside the chum bucket continued their steady flow, carrying light particles and subtle movements in a continuous rhythm that mirrored Plankton's own inner calm. The hours seemed to expand and fold upon themselves, allowing extended reflection on both the journey and the nature of achievement. He considered the patience and focus required to reach this point, the refinement of tools and strategies, and the countless rehearsals that had prepared him for precise execution. Each memory, each prior failure, each moment of anticipation became part of a larger understanding, contributing to a deep sense of fulfillment and quiet mastery. Plankton also allowed himself to observe the emotional transformation that had accompanied the completion of this stage. The years of frustration, envy, and obsession had softened into gentle awareness and reflective clarity. The intense longing that had once propelled him forward now existed as a calm acknowledgement of persistence and growth. The acquisition of the formula was no longer merely a matter of proving himself or outwitting Mr. Krabs. It had become an opportunity for quiet mastery over his own intentions, actions, and patience. This subtle shift in perspective added a richness to the accomplishment, allowing it to resonate more fully and deeply than the raw thrill of conquest ever could. The ocean beyond the chum bucket maintained its quiet presence. The gentle hum of currents, the drifting bioluminescent particles, and the muted colors forming a continuous backdrop to reflection. The space between Plankton and the surrounding environment felt fluid and expansive, as though the night itself had stretched to accommodate both movement and meditation. He remained fully aware of each sensation, each sound, each subtle vibration, integrating them into a seamless awareness that carried no urgency, no distraction, no need for immediate action. The environment and his own presence had merged into a quiet, continuous flow of reflective stillness. He spent long minutes in this state, simply observing, breathing, and maintaining awareness of the formula's secure presence. Each inhale and exhale seemed synchronized with the gentle rhythms of the ocean, reinforcing the sense of calm mastery. The quiet acknowledgement of accomplishment created space for further reflection, allowing him to consider the implications of possession and the next stages of life shaped by this success. Yet even in this reflection, there was no rush, no compulsive desire to act. The moment existed fully in its own serene completeness. As dawn approached, the first hints of light filtered through the ocean above, subtly altering the colors and the quality of illumination within the chum bucket. The transition from night to early morning brought a sense of gentle continuity, signaling the passage of time without abrupt disruption. Plankton remained still, observing the gradual shift, feeling it mirrored within himself. The calm awareness that had guided the entire mission continued to sustain him, reinforcing both the quiet satisfaction of what had been achieved and the gentle curiosity about the future that now lay ahead. The reflective period allowed him to fully integrate the quiet lessons of the night, the power of patience, the value of observation, the effectiveness of deliberate and gentle action. These principles, once theoretical, had been confirmed through direct experience, and their resonance within him was profound. He acknowledged the importance of maintaining this calm in the days to follow, recognizing that the possession of the formula, while significant, was not the culmination of understanding, but rather a continuation of a long journey toward mastery, reflection, and quiet fulfillment. With the first light of the new day filtering through the water, Plankton prepared to transition from reflection to consideration of the formula's role in his life. The container remained secure, the environment calm, and his own awareness sharp yet relaxed. The quiet achievement of the night had provided a foundation upon which all future actions, explorations, and possibilities could be built. He felt a subtle, profound sense of alignment with both the ocean and the life he had carefully cultivated within the chum bucket. A quiet acknowledgement that preparation, patience, and persistence had produced not only the object of desire, but also a deeper understanding of the self and the world in which he moved. The morning currents shifted slightly as he finally rose from his place of reflection, moving gently toward the central area of the chum bucket. Each motion was careful, deliberate, and fully integrated with the quiet rhythms of the environment. The day had begun, yet the calm established in the night continued to hold. Plankton carried with him both the tangible possession of the formula and the subtle, sustaining realization of the patience, precision, and serene awareness that had guided its acquisition. The interplay of success, reflection, and calm presence set the tone for the unfolding chapters of life that awaited, each one carrying the quiet lessons of the night into a world now touched by both achievement and anticipation. The morning light filtered softly through the ocean, drifting into the chum bucket with a calm, diffused glow that illuminated the familiar metal surfaces without harshness. Plankton moved slowly, deliberately, savoring the quiet harmony of the environment. The container holding the formula remained secure, its presence a subtle weight against his consciousness, gentle yet insistent. For the first time in years, he could consider its implications without the frantic urgency of pursuit or the anxious tension of planning. The formula was his, present, tangible, and preserved with care. The stillness surrounding him, both within the chum bucket and in the gentle flow of the surrounding currents, allowed him to observe the significance of this possession with clarity and depth. He moved to a small preparation area, a space long used for experiments, observations, and adjustments. The tools that had guided him through the night remained at rest, calm and ready, their metallic surfaces reflecting the soft ambient light. He allowed his gaze to linger over the familiar instruments, recognizing that the careful preparation of the previous hours had brought him to this point. Each piece had its role in the orchestration of success, yet now they were witnesses rather than active participants. The formula, delicate and preserved, represented not only the culmination of years of effort, but also the first quiet indication of what might unfold in the days to come. Gently, he removed the formula from its container, treating it with the same deliberate attention that had characterized the night's journey. The paper felt light, fragile, yet imbued with profound potential. Its surface was unblemished, smooth under his touch, and the careful preservation of the container ensured that it lay flat and undisturbed. In this act of observation, Plankton found a deep satisfaction, not in the rush of achievement, not in imagined victory over rivals, but in the quiet acknowledgement of the effort, patience, and focus that had brought him to this moment. The paper became a bridge between years of meticulous planning and the calm present, a tangible reminder of the alignment between preparation, skill, and intention. He placed it on a small metallic surface, allowing the soft light to illuminate the careful lines and symbols he had memorized over countless hours of study. The quiet environment amplified the subtle details, the slight texture of the paper, the faintly reflective quality of the ink, the precise arrangement of each element of the formula. He traced the edges with gentle fingers, not out of haste, but in reflective acknowledgement of the journey that had led to this possession. Each movement, slow and intentional, reinforced the stillness of the moment, transforming the observation into a meditative experience, a quiet communion with the result of his persistent endeavor. As he considered the formula, a wave of emotion washed through him, not explosive or frantic, but smooth and encompassing. There was satisfaction, certainly, but it was tempered by introspection and a soft recognition of the long road traveled. The years of failure, the repeated frustrations, and the careful observations that had informed every adjustment all converged in this reflective awareness. The calm that surrounded him was mirrored internally, a soft resonance between environment and consciousness, between the external achievement and the internal clarity it enabled. This was a moment of quiet mastery, a meditation on patience, persistence, and deliberate care. Plankton allowed himself to consider the possibilities that the formula represented. He could imagine the creation of a perfect product, its distribution, the subtle influence it could carry through the currents of the community. Yet these considerations were tempered by tranquility rather than urgency. He did not feel the pressing need to act immediately or to demonstrate his success. Instead, he felt a serene curiosity, an awareness that the value of this moment lay not solely in external accomplishment, but also in the careful, reflective understanding of the potential that had been realized. The ocean, flowing gently around the chum bucket, seemed to echo this calm perspective, its subtle currents and soft illumination supporting the contemplative atmosphere. He examined his surroundings, noting the interplay of shadows, the gentle reflection of light off metallic surfaces, and the muted vibrancy of the environment. The chum bucket itself, often a place of chaos and frantic invention, now radiated an almost sacred quiet. Each machine, each tool, each structural element of the space became part of a meditative landscape, a calm environment perfectly suited to reflection and deliberate action. Plankton moved with a smooth attentiveness, aware of every detail, every nuance of the room, integrating each observation into a continuous awareness that enhanced the profound calm of the present moment. The process of experimentation, when it began, was conducted with the same deliberate care. He approached each step with meticulous attention, ensuring that the smallest detail was observed without haste or distraction. Every ingredient, every measurement, every adjustment was performed slowly and precisely. The gentle motion of his hands, the careful alignment of equipment, and the soft hum of the water surrounding the chum bucket all contributed to a sense of harmony, a meditation in action. The formula, long pursued as an object of desire and strategy, became a guide for thoughtful engagement, a bridge between years of anticipation and the practical manifestation of intention. With each trial, the calm persisted. There was no rush to achieve immediate success, no compulsion to test limits in reckless haste. Instead, each adjustment and observation was integrated into a continuous process of mindful attention. The soft illumination of the chum bucket, the gentle pulse of surrounding currents, and the quiet resonance of the environment all worked together to support a reflective state. Plankton noticed subtle shifts in texture, faint variations in color, and minute changes in density, each observation reinforcing the connection between patient engagement and careful result. The formula, once a distant objective, now directed a slow unfolding of knowledge and understanding. As the day progressed, Plankton experienced a deep sense of alignment between his intentions and the environment. The soft movement of currents, the quiet presence of familiar machinery, and the gentle play of light across surfaces all contributed to a sense of calm mastery. The formula, held gently and treated with care, became not merely a tool, but a focus for meditation and reflection. Each subtle discovery, each minor success, carried with it a quiet satisfaction, an awareness that achievement was inseparable from patience, observation, and deliberate, thoughtful engagement. Throughout the hours, he allowed his mind to explore the implications of this acquisition with gentle curiosity. He considered the influence he could exert, the potential for creation, and the quiet authority inherent in possession of the long-sought secret. Yet each consideration was grounded in calm awareness, free from the frantic energy that had characterized earlier pursuits. There was no need for immediate validation, no external demonstration of power. The significance lay in measured understanding, in deliberate exploration, and in the serene integration of a long journey into the present moment. By evening, the chum bucket seemed to pulse with a soft, reflective energy. The surrounding ocean echoed with muted currents, carrying light particles that danced slowly, almost meditatively. Plankton moved among his instruments with careful attention, observing and interacting with each component in a manner that emphasized stillness and purpose. The calm environment, the deliberate pace, and the continuous reflective engagement all coalesced into a profound sense of mastery and contentment. The formula's presence was no longer merely a symbol of desire fulfilled. It had become a vessel for mindful action, a channel for deliberate creativity, and a reminder of the harmony between intention, patience, and careful execution. In these quiet hours, Plankton sensed an evolving relationship with the secret he had obtained. It was not only the culmination of effort and anticipation, but also a gateway to reflection and measured influence. The calm that had guided him through the night of acquisition and the subsequent journey home now expanded into the gentle awareness of potential, strategy, and subtle power. Every movement, every observation, and every careful experiment reinforced the serene, contemplative state that had become both the means and the reward of his achievement. The day faded into soft darkness, and the chum bucket rested in quiet. Illuminated by the subtle shimmer of the ocean currents, Plankton allowed the night to settle over the space, permitting the reflective energy to permeate every surface, every corner, every current. The glow of bioluminescence outside filtered gently through the walls, creating shifting, delicate patterns that merged with the soft illumination within. The environment became a living meditation, a quiet acknowledgement of patience, preparation, and calm engagement. He felt deeply integrated with the space, the object of his desire, and the surrounding currents, each contributing to a sustained serenity that reinforced both the significance of the formula and the depth of reflection it had inspired. By the end of the night, Plankton's understanding of his acquisition had transformed. The formula was no longer simply a goal realized, a prize obtained, or a challenge conquered. It had become a conduit for awareness, patience, and thoughtful action. The quiet mastery that accompanied its possession offered insight into both the practical and contemplative dimensions of his achievement. The soft, continuous rhythm of the currents, the gentle play of light and shadow, and the tranquil environment of the chum bucket reinforced the lesson that power, when approached with calm attention, could exist in harmony with patience, mindfulness, and measured engagement. The day and night had unfolded seamlessly, a meditation in motion, a quiet reflection on the journey, the achievement, and the stillness that made them meaningful. The morning currents flowed softly around the chum bucket, carrying light and warmth through the water, illuminating the metallic surfaces and diffusing through the interior with a quiet radiance. Plankton moved among his instruments with careful, deliberate motions, carrying the secured formula with a measured sense of presence. He observed the familiar surroundings with new awareness, noticing the subtleties that had previously gone unacknowledged, the soft hum of dormant machinery, the gentle sway of floating particles, the faint reflection of currents on the polished metal. The environment seemed to participate in the quiet transformation, echoing the calm authority of the formula's presence and the gentle mastery of its possessor. He began the day with deliberate experimentation, testing the initial possibilities offered by the long-coveted secret. Each step was conducted with meticulous attention, a meditation in action. The formula, once distant and enigmatic, now guided subtle alterations and careful measures, influencing every motion with gentle precision. Plankton felt a soft, pervasive connection between intention and effect, as if the currents themselves acknowledged the transition from anticipation to application. Every ingredient handled, every movement executed, became an extension of the calm that had accompanied the acquisition, reinforcing the seamless integration of knowledge, patience, and reflection. The first attempts at creation were slow, exploratory, and deliberate. Each adjustment was performed with mindful precision, focusing not on speed or immediate success, but on the quality of the process itself. He observed the interplay of elements, the faint reactions, and the subtle shifts in consistency. The quiet rhythm of the chum bucket, the gentle light filtering through the water, and the muted resonance of the surrounding currents created a meditative environment, allowing every movement to be intentional, every decision informed by calm attentiveness. In these hours, Plankton began to experience a profound sense of alignment with both his tools and the space, a union of attention, reflection, and quiet potential. As the day unfolded, subtle changes began to emerge. Ingredients blended with a softness previously unattainable, textures aligned with gentle harmony, and the air, or water, around the preparation area carried a sense of potentiality rather than tension. Plankton's movements mirrored this evolution, flowing without interruption, adjusting without effort, and observing with patience. The initial creation, small and tentative, held within it the quiet satisfaction of discovery rather than the noisy declaration of triumph. The process itself became a channel for reflection and gentle mastery, a demonstration of the patience and attentiveness cultivated over years of pursuit. He allowed the first product to rest in the tranquil space of the chum bucket, observing its characteristics with slow, measured care. The subtle nuances of texture, the faint alignment of flavors, and the quiet stability of the creation offered reassurance without urgency. Plankton moved around it gently, noting details that would have previously gone unnoticed: the interaction of light and surface, the gentle settling of ingredients, the delicate resonance of the surrounding environment. Every observation reinforced the ongoing calm and reflective state, emphasizing the value of measured engagement rather than impulsive action. Over the hours, repeated experimentation continued in the same serene rhythm. Adjustments were minor, deliberate, and integrated fully with the environment. Each successful outcome, small and incremental, reinforced the quiet mastery that had guided the acquisition of the formula. Plankton felt an emerging sense of continuity between effort and result, a soft acknowledgement that the years of planning, observation, and careful preparation were culminating in a gentle, observable transformation. The chum bucket itself seemed to breathe with the pace of the work, resonating subtly with every motion, every consideration, every reflection. The effect of the formula on the chum bucket's usual processes became apparent gradually. Machinery, once humming with predictable monotony, responded with a refined smoothness, each operation unfolding with enhanced precision and subtle timing. The ambient conditions, previously neutral, took on a softer harmony, reflecting the integration of intention, observation, and the gentle application of knowledge. Plankton's awareness expanded to include the environment as a responsive participant rather than a static backdrop. Every interaction, tool, ingredient, current, was observed and integrated into a continuous flow of reflective action, sustaining the calm mastery that had defined the acquisition and early experimentation. As the day deepened, the calm extended beyond physical interactions into a more subtle psychological realm. Plankton's thoughts moved with smooth deliberation, each consideration unfolding without haste or distraction. He reflected on the long journey, the quiet accumulation of skill, and the meticulous alignment of preparation with opportunity. The subtle emergence of results reinforced a profound understanding that the possession of the formula was not merely a tool of power or competition, but a vehicle for deliberate, reflective engagement with both environment and self. The quiet mastery it enabled offered insight into process, patience, and the nuanced effects of attention and care. By evening, the subtle effects had become more apparent. The initial creations, handled with deliberate care, reflected not only technical precision, but also a quiet resonance with Plankton's own state of mind. Each piece, while modest, carried an echo of the patience, reflection, and deliberate observation that had guided its creation. The chum bucket, long associated with chaotic ambition and repeated frustration, now embodied a serene laboratory of exploration. Each surface, current, and particle participating in the gentle unfolding of transformation, the environment itself became an extension of Plankton's calm presence, reinforcing the sense of continuity between action and reflection. As the night deepened, Plankton observed the gentle resonance of the results in relation to the surrounding currents. The water carried subtle shifts in density, temperature, and movement, all barely perceptible but integrated into the environment with quiet harmony. Each breath, each adjustment, each moment of observation was imbued with the soft awareness of interaction and effect. The process became more than experimentation. It evolved into a meditative practice, a continuous dialogue between intention, environment, and subtle outcome. The presence of the formula, once a distant goal, now guided this reflective process with a calm authority, influencing every action and perception with gentle, unspoken precision. The quiet observation extended into the deep hours of the night. Plankton allowed himself to notice every nuance, from the faint shimmer of bioluminescent particles outside to the gentle vibration of machinery within. Each minor fluctuation was absorbed into a continuous awareness, reinforcing the reflective state and the gentle mastery of the moment. The creation, the formula, and the environment became inseparable elements of a seamless experience, a holistic engagement in which every sensation, every observation, and every subtle shift contributed to the ongoing calm. The night became a vessel for integration, understanding, and the quiet unfolding of potential. Through these hours, Plankton also began to sense the broader implications of possession. The formula's potential was no longer merely conceptual. Its subtle influence was observable in minute changes in efficiency, consistency, and harmony within the chum bucket. Each measured adjustment, each delicate observation became part of a flowing continuum, a soft acknowledgement of causality and effect. The quiet mastery that had guided the acquisition now informed the ongoing application, reinforcing a sense of serene agency and reflective control. The environment, responsive and gentle, supported this integration, offering subtle feedback without disturbance or haste. As dawn approached once again, the currents outside carried a soft luminescence, illuminating the chum bucket with gentle gradients of color. Plankton moved slowly, deliberately, reflecting on the delicate balance of action and observation, influence and response. The effects of the formula, while subtle, were undeniable in the measured precision of creation, the gentle stability of outcomes, and the quiet harmony of the environment. The calm mastery that had characterized the acquisition and early application now expanded into a broader awareness, encompassing process, result, and the interplay of action with reflection. Each movement, each breath, each observation became a part of the continuous meditation of creation. By the time light filtered more fully through the water, Plankton sat in quiet observation, the subtle effects of the formula reflected in the environment, the creations, and his own steady awareness. The chum bucket remained serene, the currents harmonious, and the night's work integrated seamlessly into the flow of the ocean around it. The first day of experimentation had revealed the gentle power of patience, careful observation, and reflective action. The secret he had obtained, once a distant object of desire, had become a conduit for quiet mastery, a channel for deliberate engagement, and a reminder of the profound alignment between preparation, intention, and environment. The currents carried a gentle hush through the chum bucket, blending with the soft luminescence of the ocean to create a tranquil environment that seemed suspended in time. Plankton moved slowly, deliberately, the secured formula resting lightly in a specialized compartment, a tangible reminder of the culmination of years of pursuit. The day's initial experiments had unfolded with quiet success, revealing subtle alignments between process, environment, and outcome. Yet, as the light shifted and deepened across the metallic surfaces, a gentle curiosity began to arise, a soft questioning of the nature and extent of the power he had obtained. This was not the frantic anxiety of failure or the restless impatience of desire. It was a reflective, calm examination, a subtle observation of what had been achieved and what remained uncertain. He traced the edges of the compartment with a slow, thoughtful motion, feeling the texture of the container beneath his fingertips. The paper within, fragile yet precise, carried the weight of knowledge and potential, yet it also carried a quiet ambiguity. The experiments had produced results, but each outcome seemed tempered by subtle inconsistencies, minute deviations that invited reflection rather than alarm. Plankton observed these with careful attention, noting the precise nature of each variation, understanding that the calm mastery of process was not always equivalent to control over every effect. The environment and the formula both offered guidance and resistance, a continuous interaction that demanded patience and mindful awareness. The soft hum of the surrounding machinery, coupled with the gentle sway of the currents outside, created a meditative backdrop for this reflection. Plankton moved slowly among his instruments, observing the interplay of light, metal, and water. Each small adjustment he made was performed with deliberate care, integrated into the continuous rhythm of quiet experimentation. The subtle divergences in outcomes became objects of study rather than sources of frustration, inviting him to notice patterns, nuances, and possibilities that might otherwise have been overlooked. There was no urgency to resolve uncertainty. Instead, the calm observation of the subtleties themselves became the focus, a meditation on complexity, patience, and understanding. As he continued to observe, Plankton's mind expanded to consider the broader implications of the formula's effects. The subtle power of creation, while undeniable in its immediate influence on texture, consistency, and process, also revealed the limitations inherent in possession without context. He noted how each attempt required attentive observation, careful adjustment, and mindful integration with the surrounding environment. The potential of the formula was profound, yet it relied upon deliberate action and patient awareness to manifest fully. This realization, gentle and pervasive, was not disheartening but contemplative, highlighting the subtle balance between capability and engagement, between knowledge and application. In the quiet of the chum bucket, Plankton allowed himself to reflect on the emotional dimensions of his acquisition. The long years of desire, frustration, and anticipation had been transformed into calm observation, yet they carried residual echoes of longing and intensity. The formula had fulfilled a tangible objective, yet it also prompted the subtle questioning of whether attainment alone could convey the depth of fulfillment imagined in restless nights of preparation. This awareness did not diminish satisfaction. Rather, it added layers of richness, emphasizing that achievement and understanding are often intertwined with reflection, perception, and the subtle nuances of experience. The calm mastery he had cultivated allowed him to observe these sensations without judgment, appreciating their presence as part of the ongoing journey. The day unfolded slowly, each moment extending seamlessly into the next. Plankton continued his deliberate experimentation, guided by quiet observation and mindful awareness. Each trial produced outcomes that were both familiar and subtly novel, reinforcing the notion that mastery was not absolute, but evolving, dependent upon continuous engagement and reflection. The currents carried light particles through the chum bucket, their slow, undisturbed movement echoing the rhythm of careful thought and deliberate action. The gentle sway of machinery, the soft resonance of metal and water, and the quiet presence of the formula all contributed to a holistic awareness that was both grounding and expansive. Plankton considered the nature of the power he now held, recognizing that it was neither instantaneous nor absolute. The subtle effects on ingredients, processes, and the environment demonstrated capability, yet they also revealed dependence on sustained attention and deliberate engagement. Each creation, though guided by the formula, required thoughtful oversight, reflective adjustment, and patience. The awareness of this interdependence deepened his understanding of mastery, emphasizing that possession of a secret, even one long sought and finally attained, was inseparable from continuous observation, reflection, and careful action. The calm, measured unfolding of the day provided space for these insights to take root, reinforced by the stillness of the surrounding environment. The evening currents shifted gently, carrying new patterns of light through the chum bucket. Plankton moved among his tools and creations with smooth deliberation, observing the subtle interactions of elements, the faint variations in texture, and the delicate harmonies of the environment. The calm of the space, sustained over hours of patient engagement, amplified his awareness of the delicate balance between intention and effect, between mastery and observation. Each small success, each nuanced outcome, reinforced the reflective state, reminding him that the value of the formula extended beyond immediate results to encompass the meditative, integrative practice of careful, attentive engagement with both process and environment. In the deeper hours of the night, Plankton allowed a moment of pause, sitting near the secured formula, observing the soft illumination and gentle currents that flowed through the chum bucket. The quiet was filled with the subtle presence of possibility, the awareness of potential influence, and the reflection on the nature of achievement. He noted the gentle discrepancies in early experiments, understanding that even perfect knowledge does not guarantee uniform outcomes. The calm observation of these subtleties became a meditation on the imperfection inherent in all action, a soft recognition that mastery involves ongoing reflection, adaptation, and patient attention rather than singular conquest. He reflected also on the long journey that had led to this point, the years of careful study, meticulous preparation, repeated attempts, and patient observation. Each step, once imbued with frustration or impatience, now resonated with the quiet satisfaction of process understood and integrated. The acquisition of the formula, once the object of restless desire, had become both an achievement and a reflective lens through which to observe the delicate interplay of intention, effort, and subtle effect. The calm mastery cultivated through this journey allowed him to consider both immediate results and the unfolding consequences in a gentle, expansive awareness. Throughout the night, Plankton maintained deliberate engagement with both environment and formula, observing the ongoing effects and subtle interplays of elements. The chum bucket seemed to resonate with this quiet presence, its machinery, surfaces, and surrounding currents harmonizing with the meditative rhythm of careful observation. The results of experimentation, though modest in scale, reflected the ongoing refinement of process, the continuous integration of attention, and the soft emergence of pattern from deliberate action. Each success, minor or pronounced, reinforced the reflective awareness that guided every motion, every breath, and every adjustment. As dawn approached, the gentle illumination of the ocean above began to filter through the walls of the chum bucket, blending with the subtle glow of interior lights to create a calm, continuous radiance. Plankton rose slowly, deliberate in each movement, observing the transitions of light, the soft play of shadows, and the ongoing interplay of currents. The quiet awareness that had developed over the night extended into this new phase, providing a steady, reflective foundation from which to consider next steps, future experiments, and the long-term implications of possession. The subtle doubts that had arisen were not sources of concern, but invitations to deeper understanding, guiding careful reflection and mindful engagement. By morning, the chum bucket was suffused with a serene energy, a quiet acknowledgement of patience, observation, and careful action. Plankton allowed himself a long, slow breath, sensing the continuous integration of achievement, reflection, and potential. The formula, once a distant goal and object of desire, now existed within a larger framework of ongoing attention, careful engagement, and thoughtful observation. The gentle emergence of doubt had revealed a deeper truth, that mastery, possession, and understanding are inseparable from reflection, patience, and the mindful integration of experience. The day began with calm anticipation, not of immediate triumph, but of measured exploration, subtle discovery, and quiet mastery, all carried forward by the currents and the soft luminescence that had long accompanied his journey. The ocean outside the chum bucket moved with gentle consistency, soft currents flowing in slow, hypnotic rhythms, carrying light and sediment in muted waves that reflected the quiet of the underwater world. Plankton observed from within, feeling the subtle expansion of influence that accompanied possession of the secret formula. The first experiments, completed in careful solitude, had revealed minor transformations within his controlled environment, but now a new awareness emerged, a recognition that every action, every creation, extended its presence subtly into the currents beyond. The world outside, vast and patient, responded in minute, almost imperceptible ways, echoing the ripple of effort and attention that had been set in motion. He moved deliberately through the interior of the chum bucket, attending to the tools, machines, and small instruments that guided the process of experimentation. The soft hum of machinery blended seamlessly with the muted flow of water, creating a meditative soundscape. Each motion was considered, each adjustment deliberate, as Plankton aligned action with observation. The awareness of external ripples added a quiet layer of responsibility to his movements, reminding him that the possession of the formula was not confined to the private space of his laboratory. Every detail, no matter how small, carried implications beyond immediate perception, weaving his careful efforts into the broader rhythm of the ocean. Outside, the currents reflected subtle changes in composition and flow, faintly influenced by the ongoing work within the chum bucket. Plankton noticed the gentle shifts in sediment distribution, the soft variations in light refracted through the water, and the delicate motion of drifting particles. These were almost imperceptible, yet they confirmed a quiet truth. The formula's influence was not contained, and his careful interventions resonated through the environment, mingling with existing forces in a fluid, continuous dance. This realization was neither startling nor urgent. It was instead absorbed as a subtle, reflective observation, reinforcing the ongoing importance of mindfulness, attention, and measured engagement. As the day advanced, Plankton continued his methodical experimentation, observing how minor adjustments in ingredients and process produced subtle reverberations beyond his immediate control. The chum bucket, once a contained, predictable environment, now functioned as a channel of influence, transmitting nuanced effects into the currents and interacting with the surrounding life in quiet, unseen ways. Each trial carried with it an unspoken responsibility, a reminder that careful attention was required not only for immediate results, but also for the gentle harmonization of external forces. The gentle sway of currents, the faint shimmer of particles, and the soft resonance of surrounding machinery created a tranquil yet purposeful backdrop for these reflections. Plankton found himself increasingly attentive to minute interactions between his creations and the ocean beyond. Tiny disturbances in the water, subtle differences in clarity, and the faint movements of nearby organisms became points of careful observation. Each effect, though delicate and often imperceptible, contributed to a growing understanding of interconnectedness. The presence of the formula was no longer simply a tool for experimentation. It had become a medium through which influence, intentionality, and reflection intertwined. The calm mastery cultivated through patient, deliberate engagement allowed him to perceive these interactions without judgment or haste, integrating observation into action seamlessly. The subtle transformations extended even to the currents near the chum bucket's exterior. Sediment shifted in soft patterns, light refracted differently through small movements of water, and the faint presence of chemical alterations from experimentation mingled slowly with natural processes. Plankton observed these phenomena with deliberate care, noting the quiet impact of each intervention. The awareness that influence extended beyond immediate control created a gentle sense of accountability, emphasizing the ongoing necessity of careful observation, reflective adjustment, and patience. The calm of the environment allowed these insights to settle fully, reinforcing the importance of mindful engagement and measured action. Throughout the day, Plankton maintained deliberate attention to both internal and external conditions. Each step of experimentation, each adjustment in technique, was guided by careful awareness of the subtle ripples extending outward. The formula, once a private object of desire, now functioned as a quiet conduit of effect, linking intention with consequence in a manner both delicate and profound. The interplay of influence and observation created a continuous feedback loop. The calm of reflection shaped action, and the careful results of action informed ongoing awareness. This cycle, slow and patient, became the central rhythm of his day, sustaining a quiet mastery that extended seamlessly into the surrounding ocean. Even as minor effects emerged outside the chum bucket, the environment within remained a sanctuary of calm precision. The soft hum of machinery, the gentle illumination of the room, and the careful arrangement of tools allowed every observation to be absorbed without distraction. Plankton moved deliberately among the instruments, noting the subtle interplay of currents, ingredients, and machinery. The quiet awareness of influence, both immediate and extended, reinforced a reflective attentiveness, a measured consideration of the consequences of creation, and the delicate responsibility embedded in the possession of such knowledge. The day's work became not merely a series of experiments, but a continuous meditation on action, observation, and subtle effect. The gentle flow of light through the water, interacting with the metallic surfaces of the chum bucket, created shifting patterns that echoed the ripples in the surrounding ocean. Plankton observed these patterns with calm attentiveness, noting how subtle shifts in angle, intensity, and reflection mirrored the broader influences of his actions. Each particle, each fluctuation, each movement became part of an integrated system, a web of quiet interaction linking deliberate activity with external consequence. The soft awareness of this connectivity deepened his reflective state, emphasizing that mastery and influence were inseparable from observation, patience, and attentiveness to even the smallest elements of the environment. By evening, the first tangible patterns of the day's influence became discernible. The immediate vicinity of the chum bucket exhibited slight variations in clarity, movement, and particle distribution. These changes, imperceptible to casual observation, were clear to Plankton's attentive eyes, reinforcing the subtle power of careful action. Each effect, gentle and cumulative, confirmed the interwoven nature of intention and consequence. The calm reflection that had guided the acquisition, experimentation, and initial application of the formula now extended naturally to this emerging awareness of external impact, creating a seamless continuum of meditation, action, and insight. Night deepened, and Plankton allowed himself to pause, observing the faint ripples extending outward through the water. He recognized that while the effects were minor, they were real, and they reflected the careful integration of effort, attention, and patience. The formula's influence, combined with deliberate experimentation, had become part of a larger rhythm, interacting with currents, particles, and the surrounding environment. The calm awareness of these subtle interconnections reinforced a profound understanding that even quiet, deliberate action can shape the world beyond immediate perception, and that mastery involves both creation and reflective observation of consequences. In these hours of reflection, Plankton allowed a gentle curiosity to arise. He considered the potential of these subtle influences to accumulate over time, the quiet ways in which consistent attention might manifest larger effects, and the ongoing interplay of action and environment. The formula, though small and finite, was a key to processes far greater than immediate creation. The calm observation of these possibilities, without urgency or distraction, became a meditative practice in its own right, a continuous integration of insight, reflection, and deliberate engagement. The currents outside the chum bucket carried the soft glow of bioluminescent particles, drifting slowly in unbroken rhythm. Plankton moved deliberately among his tools, noting the interaction of light, water, and subtle chemical traces from experimentation. Each observation deepened his sense of connectivity, linking personal action to environmental response. The gentle realization that influence extended beyond containment offered a new dimension to his practice. The awareness of responsibility, the necessity of continued observation, and the calm mastery that transforms simple experimentation into sustained, subtle effect. By the end of the night, Plankton rested near the compartment housing the formula, allowing the currents, light, and environment to envelop him in a quiet continuum. The subtle ripples beyond the chum bucket, though invisible to most, were integrated into his reflective awareness, a soft confirmation of the interconnectedness of all action. The calm mastery cultivated over years of pursuit and experimentation had extended seamlessly into the external world, producing gentle echoes that carried both knowledge and insight. The night concluded with a profound stillness, a soft meditation on influence, awareness, and the quiet unfolding of effects, setting the stage for the next phase of exploration and reflection. The chum bucket, bathed in the dim, shifting light of early currents, held a stillness that felt almost sacred. Plankton moved deliberately through the quiet space, each motion measured, each gesture a part of the meditative rhythm he had cultivated over weeks of patient experimentation. The formula rested in its secure compartment, unchanging yet laden with potential. He observed it not with the excitement of triumph, but with the subtle awareness of responsibility, curiosity, and the emerging complexity of expectation. The calm hum of machinery and the faint ripple of water outside formed a continuous, reflective cadence, emphasizing the stillness and the focus of the moment. Plankton began the day by attending to the experiments that had become both ritual and study. Each step was conducted with slow, deliberate care. Ingredients were measured with meticulous precision, tools adjusted with gentle attention, and observations recorded with steady, unhurried awareness. The results of prior days had been promising yet subtle, confirming the formula's efficacy while revealing its nuanced character. This duality between expectation and measured reality produced a soft, contemplative tension, a gentle awareness of the distance between imagined outcomes and observed results. The calm mastery that had carried him through acquisition now supported this reflective engagement, guiding him to observe without urgency or frustration. As he worked, Plankton noticed how subtle variations in preparation influenced the outcomes. Tiny differences in temperature, timing, or agitation produced small, perceptible changes, each one a delicate echo of interaction between intention and effect. He moved among the instruments with fluid precision, absorbing these observations into a continuous awareness. The quiet of the chum bucket, combined with the steady presence of the formula, allowed him to perceive these nuances fully, integrating them into a growing understanding of both the limits and possibilities inherent in possession of the secret. Each subtle insight reinforced the necessity of patient, reflective engagement, rather than impulsive or hurried experimentation. The day progressed slowly, the currents carrying light particles into the space, their soft dance across metallic surfaces creating shifting, hypnotic patterns. Plankton paused frequently, observing both the results of his work and the broader rhythms of the environment. The formula, once an abstract object of desire, had become a tangible mediator of action and consequence, and with that tangibility came an awareness of expectation, both external and internal. He recognized the quiet tension between the imagined potency of the formula and the measured reality of its effects, a gentle acknowledgement of the subtle limitations and responsibilities inherent in mastery. In the quiet hours of reflection, Plankton considered the nature of his own anticipation. For years, the acquisition of the formula had been the pinnacle of desire, the ultimate expression of skill and persistence. Yet the measured results of careful experimentation revealed a complexity that tempered the immediacy of triumph. Subtle outcomes, minor variations, and the dependence of efficacy on attentive execution produced a calm, reflective understanding that possession alone was not synonymous with total control, that mastery required continuous observation and thoughtful adjustment. The formula, in its quiet authority, demanded engagement rather than complacency, patience rather than arrogance. He moved slowly among the experimental setups, noting how each creation reflected both careful intention and subtle environmental influence. Tiny currents, minute differences in material interaction, and the soft resonance of machinery all contributed to the unfolding results. Plankton's awareness expanded to include these details, integrating them into a continuous rhythm of observation, adjustment, and reflection. The subtle interplay between expectation and reality, between intention and outcome, produced a meditative clarity, emphasizing the depth and patience required to navigate not only the physical effects of the formula, but also the psychological and emotional dimensions of its possession. Throughout the day, Plankton became increasingly attuned to the interplay between his careful procedures and the gradual manifestation of results. The chum bucket, usually a place of chaotic energy and relentless ambition, now operated as a tranquil environment of reflective study, each surface, current, and instrument harmonizing with his deliberate pace. The quiet integration of observation and action produced a layered understanding of influence, emphasizing that even subtle, controlled effects extended into broader rhythms. The formula's efficacy, while tangible, was inseparable from his patience, attentiveness, and calm engagement, creating a continuous meditation on cause, effect, and thoughtful mastery. As evening approached, Plankton paused, allowing the results of the day's work to settle and integrate into his awareness. He observed the minor variations, noting how even the smallest details reflected the balance between intention and environment. The quiet mastery he had cultivated was reinforced by the measured outcomes of experimentation. Yet the soft realization emerged that the formula's potential was not instantaneous or absolute. Its effects were gentle, cumulative, and dependent upon sustained attention. This awareness produced a reflective calm, a deep understanding that the satisfaction of possession was intertwined with the ongoing responsibility of mindful action. The soft glow of bioluminescent particles outside the chum bucket cast delicate, shifting shadows across metallic surfaces, creating a tranquil visual symphony. Plankton allowed himself to absorb the interplay of light, water, and movement, integrating observation into a continuous, meditative awareness. The formula's presence remained central, yet unobtrusive, a guiding force for reflection and careful experimentation. The subtle tension between expectation and measured reality became a point of contemplation rather than frustration, a gentle acknowledgement of the depth and complexity of true mastery. Night deepened, and Plankton moved through the quiet interior with deliberate precision. Each motion, from adjusting instruments to observing the environment, was imbued with a reflective, attentive quality. The chum bucket seemed to resonate with this quiet energy, amplifying the meditative state of observation and action. The cumulative effects of the day's work, subtle yet perceptible, reinforced the understanding that mastery and influence were inseparable from careful, patient engagement. The formula, while powerful, demanded continuous reflection and thoughtful execution, reminding him that even long-sought goals contain inherent complexity and responsibility. He sat for long intervals, observing both the physical outcomes of the experiments and the gentle flow of currents beyond the chum bucket. The quiet interaction of particles, light, and water became a mirror for internal reflection, a subtle meditation on expectation, potential, and the reality of possession. Plankton recognized that the long-held vision of immediate triumph had been replaced by a more nuanced awareness that power, influence, and knowledge operate within systems of interaction, and that mindful observation amplifies understanding more than impatience ever could. The night became a vessel for integrating these reflections, a continuous meditation on action, effect, and deliberate presence. By the early hours of morning, Plankton allowed the subtle weight of expectation to settle into a calm, reflective awareness. He considered the trajectory of the past days, the careful acquisition, measured experimentation, observation of ripple effects, and the ongoing tension between imagined potential and realized influence. Each stage had revealed a deeper layer of understanding that true mastery requires not only knowledge and skill, but also reflection, patience, and mindful attention to subtle outcomes. The formula, while long desired and finally obtained, had become a conduit for ongoing meditation, guiding both action and contemplation with quiet authority. As dawn approached, the soft currents carried a gentle luminescence into the chum bucket. Plankton rose slowly, moving with deliberate attention through the familiar environment. The subtle interplay of light, water, and instruments created a continuous rhythm that mirrored his own calm state. The quiet mastery he had cultivated guided each motion, each observation, each reflective pause. The tension between expectation and measured reality persisted, not as a source of anxiety, but as a reminder of the depth, patience, and attention inherent in true influence. The day began with serene awareness, prepared to integrate the lessons of subtle consequence, reflection, and mindful engagement into ongoing action. The currents outside the chum bucket flowed softly, carrying gentle light and suspended particles in muted, hypnotic patterns. Plankton moved among the instruments and creations with deliberate care, observing the subtle nuances of each step in the ongoing experiments. The formula rested in its compartment, unchanging, yet full of quiet promise. Its presence, a constant reminder of the culmination of years of anticipation. He approached it not with the excitement of conquest, but with reflective attention, aware that possession alone did not equate to absolute mastery. The quiet environment, the flowing currents, and the muted hum of machinery created a sanctuary for contemplation, a space in which subtle understanding could flourish. He began the day by reviewing the outcomes of previous trials, observing patterns, minor variations, and the faint, cumulative effects of careful experimentation. Each creation, though modest in scale, revealed insights into the formula's character, its strengths, and its limitations. The subtleties became objects of meditation, the slight shifts in texture, the delicate harmonies of ingredients, and the gentle alignment of results with expectation, all invited attentive observation. Plankton noted how each subtle adjustment rippled through both the creations and the environment, reinforcing the delicate interplay between intention, action, and outcome. The quiet mastery cultivated over time became the lens through which these reflections unfolded. As the day progressed, a gentle awareness began to emerge, a subtle consideration of value and consequence. The formula, once an object of singular desire, was revealed to possess both power and limitation. Its effects were real, yet contingent upon patient attention, precise execution, and integration with the surrounding environment. Plankton observed that the results, though satisfying, required continuous engagement. They did not produce instant triumph, nor did they guarantee lasting dominance. The quiet acknowledgement of these limitations was not discouraging, but contemplative, emphasizing the balance between potential and execution, between imagined capability and measured reality. He moved slowly through the preparation area, adjusting instruments with meticulous care, attending to minute variations in texture, temperature, and movement. Each action was deliberate, reinforcing the reflective state and the meditative rhythm of observation. The soft hum of machinery and the faint currents outside blended seamlessly with his attentive motions, creating an ongoing awareness of connection between effort, outcome, and the broader environment. The formula, present yet unassuming, guided the unfolding process, a quiet mediator between intention and effect, its influence tangible, yet requiring thoughtful cultivation. Plankton allowed himself long pauses, sitting near the secured formula, observing the interplay of light, water, and instrument. The subtle shifts in the results of experimentation reflected both the power and the limitations inherent in its design. The quiet mastery, cultivated over years of anticipation and careful action, allowed him to absorb these observations without judgment, integrating awareness into reflective understanding. Each nuance, each minor divergence, each subtle success contributed to a growing comprehension of the delicate measure of value. The realization that true potency emerges not solely from possession, but from careful observation, thoughtful action, and patient integration. The afternoon currents brought a soft glow through the chum bucket, illuminating surfaces, instruments, and flowing water with gentle gradients. Plankton moved slowly among the setups, noting how even slight alterations in execution produced observable changes in results. The interplay between consistency and variability became a focus of reflective attention, highlighting the subtle interdependence of preparation, environment, and process. The formula, though complete and precise, operated within a context that required delicate alignment with ongoing effort, observation, and adaptation. This awareness deepened his understanding, emphasizing the quiet complexity of mastery and the layered nature of value. As evening approached, Plankton reflected on the long anticipation that had led to this moment. The years of planning, study, and careful observation had culminated in the attainment of the secret formula. Yet the lived experience revealed a nuanced truth. Value was not determined solely by possession, but by thoughtful application, sustained attention, and reflective understanding. The quiet results of experimentation, the subtle interplay of factors within the chum bucket, and the gentle influence on surrounding currents all underscored the need for continuous engagement. Achievement, while satisfying, was inseparable from ongoing mindfulness and deliberate integration of insight. The night deepened, and the bioluminescent particles outside cast gentle, shifting light through the water. Plankton moved deliberately among the instruments, observing subtle interactions, minor divergences, and the quiet alignment of results with intention. Each observation reinforced a calm, reflective awareness. Mastery requires patience, attentiveness, and a recognition of both power and limitation. The formula, though potent, did not override the complexity of process. It demanded thoughtful engagement, careful adjustment, and ongoing reflection. The quiet interplay of environment, tool, and action became a continuous meditation on value, influence, and the depth of understanding. He allowed his thoughts to drift gently toward the future, considering the potential accumulation of small, deliberate actions over time. The subtle effects, now extending beyond the immediate environment, suggested that value manifests gradually through careful integration rather than sudden achievement. The calm realization that the formula's influence required sustained mindfulness reinforced the reflective state, providing insight into the broader rhythms of cause and effect. Plankton observed that while the secret had fulfilled long-held desire, the true significance lay in the thoughtful application of knowledge and the integration of observation, intention, and action. Through the night, Plankton continued to move deliberately, attending to minor variations, observing subtle patterns, and reflecting on the nuanced measure of value. The chum bucket, usually associated with ambition and frustration, now resonated with tranquility, its instruments, currents, and surfaces aligned with the meditative pace of reflection. The formula, while central, was integrated into a larger system of awareness and careful engagement, reinforcing the understanding that true mastery is inseparable from deliberate observation and reflective practice. Each movement, each adjustment, and each observation became a quiet affirmation of patience, mindfulness, and thoughtful consideration. By the early hours of morning, Plankton allowed the quiet measure of the day's work to integrate fully into awareness. The results, subtle yet meaningful, reflected the delicate balance between expectation and reality, between potential and careful execution. The formula, long desired and finally attained, had revealed both potency and limitation, demonstrating that value is inseparable from the ongoing practice of reflection, attention, and thoughtful action. The calm mastery cultivated through years of anticipation and careful work now extended seamlessly into understanding, providing a steady foundation for further exploration, measured experimentation, and reflective observation. As dawn approached, the currents outside carried a gentle, shifting light into the chum bucket. Plankton rose slowly, moving with deliberate care, observing the interplay of illumination, water, and instruments. The quiet mastery that had guided him through acquisition, experimentation, and reflection now supported an expanded awareness. The recognition that value exists not merely in possession, but in thoughtful, continuous application, attentive observation, and careful integration. The day began with a serene readiness, poised to explore the nuanced balance of power, consequence, and mindful engagement, guided by the subtle, reflective lessons of long experience and patient attention. The currents outside the chum bucket moved with a gentle, unhurried rhythm, carrying particles of light and shadow through the water in slow, mesmerizing patterns. Plankton observed from within, his movements deliberate, his awareness attuned to every nuance of environment, instrument, and subtle shift. The formula rested securely, a tangible embodiment of years of anticipation and careful pursuit. Yet its presence now inspired reflections that extended beyond immediate action. The calm mastery, cultivated over countless hours of observation and experimentation, allowed him to consider not just results, but the horizon of possibilities, the unfolding landscape of potential that stretched quietly beyond the familiar walls of the chum bucket. He moved slowly among his experimental tools, adjusting with careful attention, noting the interplay of light, water, and machinery. Each observation reinforced the delicate balance between intention and outcome, between potential and measured application. The formula, once a distant object of desire, now functioned as a guide rather than a mere prize. Its power was evident, yet it operated within a system of subtle dependencies: the surrounding environment, the patience of observation, and the careful calibration of process all influenced the eventual effect. Plankton felt a quiet curiosity, a meditative engagement with the unfolding complexity of influence and consequence. As the day advanced, Plankton allowed his mind to drift toward the broader implications of possession. The initial experiments had demonstrated capability, yet the subtle feedback from both environment and result suggested a deeper reality. Mastery is never absolute. Each creation, each minor ripple in the water, each nuanced observation revealed that influence is layered, contingent, and intertwined with ongoing attention. The horizon of possibility stretched endlessly, inviting exploration, adjustment, and patient reflection. The calm mastery that guided his hands also guided his thoughts, fostering an expansive awareness of potential futures without urgency or expectation. He paused frequently, sitting near the compartment that held the formula, observing the interplay of currents, light, and subtle particles suspended in the water. Each minor variation, each shifting reflection, carried with it a quiet lesson in patience, attentiveness, and the nuanced nature of effect. The subtle transformations within the chum bucket mirrored the unfolding awareness within his mind. The recognition that power is not solely in possession, but in the thoughtful, sustained application of knowledge and skill. The gentle emergence of this understanding created a serene space in which to consider the long-term consequences of ambition, the measured application of potential, and the continuous practice of mindful observation. Plankton reflected on the years of anticipation, the careful strategies, and the repeated attempts that had finally culminated in acquisition of the formula. The journey itself, long and deliberate, had cultivated the qualities necessary to navigate the horizon of possibility: patience, attentiveness, adaptability, and reflective awareness. The quiet mastery he now practiced was inseparable from these accumulated experiences, reinforcing the insight that the formula's ultimate potential would not be realized in haste, nor through simple possession, but through ongoing, deliberate engagement with both environment and process. The horizon was not a destination, but a space of continuous exploration and thoughtful application. The afternoon currents brought a muted glow, illuminating the chum bucket's interior with shifting gradients that emphasized the subtle contours of instruments, surfaces, and suspended particles. Plankton moved among them with measured care, noting how each minor adjustment in preparation produced delicate shifts in outcome. The subtle feedback loop between observation, action, and result provided a meditation in motion, reinforcing the connection between mindful attention and emergent possibility. The formula, though central, was integrated into this broader rhythm, guiding thought and action simultaneously, a quiet yet profound mediator of potential and reflection. As the day faded, Plankton allowed himself to consider the external horizon, the possibilities that extended beyond the immediate environment. The first subtle effects had already begun to ripple outward, tiny shifts in currents and interactions that suggested an expanding influence. Yet even these nascent outcomes were tempered by the realization that meaningful impact requires sustained attention and careful adaptation. The horizon of possibility was thus simultaneously inspiring and grounding, a space of potential that demanded both curiosity and discipline, observation and adjustment, patience and insight. The quiet mastery of reflection allowed Plankton to navigate this space with serene attentiveness. Night descended, and the soft glow of bioluminescent particles outside illuminated the chum bucket with delicate, shifting light. Plankton moved deliberately through the familiar environment, observing the subtle interplay of instrument, material, and water. Each minor adjustment, each careful measurement, carried with it a quiet acknowledgement of potential and consequence. The horizon of possibility, though vast and expansive, was inseparable from the disciplined engagement that guided every motion and thought. The formula's power was evident, yet it required integration with continuous observation and patient practice to manifest fully, a subtle reminder that even long-sought goals demand ongoing cultivation. He allowed his mind to wander gently, exploring potential futures with reflective curiosity. What might unfold if each subtle effect accumulated over weeks, months, or years? How would careful engagement transform mere possession into sustained influence? The quiet awareness of both possibility and responsibility shaped his reflection, creating a meditative landscape in which outcomes were neither guaranteed nor absent, but emergent through sustained, thoughtful action. The horizon extended endlessly, a continuum of exploration in which patience, attention, and reflective mastery were inseparable from the potential the formula contained. Throughout the night, Plankton moved deliberately, observing both internal and external conditions with a calm, measured presence. Each ripple, each subtle shift in texture, each minor outcome was integrated into a growing understanding of influence and responsibility. The formula, while potent, was part of a larger system of cause and effect, a mediator between intention and consequence. The calm mastery he had cultivated allowed him to perceive these relationships fully, integrating observation, action, and reflection into a continuous meditation on potential, effect, and deliberate engagement. The horizon of possibility expanded quietly, inviting patient exploration without urgency or haste. By the early hours of morning, Plankton allowed himself to rest briefly, observing the soft currents and subtle light patterns around the chum bucket. The horizon of possibility, though vast, had been rendered approachable through patient attention, reflective practice, and careful observation. Each prior step, each minor adjustment, each small experiment contributed to an ongoing accumulation of knowledge and awareness, reinforcing the insight that true influence arises not from instant achievement, but from sustained, deliberate engagement. The quiet mastery he practiced served as both compass and vessel, guiding action and reflection toward the unfolding landscape of potential. As dawn approached, gentle currents carried filtered light into the chum bucket, illuminating surfaces and particles with a soft glow. Plankton rose slowly, moving with deliberate attention, attuned to the quiet rhythms of environment, instrument, and formula. The horizon of possibility stretched before him, vast and expansive, yet intimately connected to the ongoing practice of reflection, observation, and thoughtful action. The quiet mastery cultivated over years of pursuit, experimentation, and reflection allowed him to consider future potential without haste, expectation, or anxiety, embracing the continuous interplay of patience, attentiveness, and subtle influence as the guiding principle of his journey. The currents of the ocean moved gently, carrying faint glimmers of light and drifting particles through the still waters outside the chum bucket. Plankton sat near the compartment that held the long-coveted formula, observing it with calm attentiveness. Years of anticipation, strategy, careful observation, and meticulous action had brought him to this final stage, a moment in which the culmination of ambition met the reality of application. The environment, serene and unchanging in its slow, hypnotic rhythm, mirrored the reflective state that had carried him through weeks of experimentation. The quiet mastery he had cultivated allowed him to consider not only outcomes, but also the subtle, pervasive effects that radiated outward from his careful labor. He began by reviewing the results of his ongoing efforts, examining the textures, consistencies, and subtle harmonies produced through patient application of the formula. Each creation, delicate and deliberate, reflected not only the inherent potency of the secret, but also the meticulous attention and refined skill that had been honed over years of desire and study. Plankton observed the nuanced interactions between ingredients, machinery, and environment, noting the minor variations that revealed both strength and limitation. The formula's power, though tangible, required integration with awareness, patience, and continuous adaptation, a gentle reminder that mastery is never isolated from engagement with circumstance. As the day progressed, Plankton reflected on the long journey that had brought him to this point. The acquisition of the formula, once imagined as a singular act of triumph, had unfolded into a continuum of observation, experimentation, and reflective attention. Every trial, minor divergence, and subtle success had contributed to the understanding that true accomplishment is measured not merely by possession, but by thoughtful application and integration. The quiet satisfaction of this realization settled gently, not as the exuberance of conquest, but as a deep, enduring sense of alignment between intention, action, and reflection. He moved deliberately among his experimental setups, attending to minor adjustments with meticulous care. Each motion, each observation, and each small intervention was informed by the cumulative lessons of experience. The quiet hum of machinery, the soft illumination of the space, and the gentle flow of currents outside all combined to create a meditative rhythm, reinforcing the subtle awareness of influence and consequence. Plankton noted the ways in which results extended beyond immediate perception, rippling outward through the environment in tiny, almost imperceptible shifts. These observations deepened his understanding that mastery carries responsibility, and that influence, however subtle, cannot be separated from the awareness that guides it. As evening approached, he allowed himself to consider the broader implications of the formula's existence in his possession. The results were real, yet tempered by the realities of process, environment, and continual attentiveness. The quiet power of creation existed alongside limitations that required reflection and careful action to navigate effectively. The horizon of possibility, previously abstract and distant, had become a tangible space in which each deliberate step shaped outcomes in subtle, cumulative ways. Plankton observed that the pursuit, acquisition, and application of the secret formula had transformed not only the immediate environment, but also his own understanding of patience, effort, and responsibility. Night descended, and the gentle glow of bioluminescent particles outside created a shifting tapestry of light and shadow across the chum bucket's surfaces. Plankton moved deliberately through his instruments, observing minor variations and reflecting on the delicate balance between expectation and reality. The quiet mastery cultivated over years of anticipation allowed him to integrate observations seamlessly into ongoing practice. The formula's efficacy, while evident, revealed its nuanced dependence on careful application. This awareness produced a profound meditative clarity. The measure of true influence is found in sustained, deliberate engagement rather than instantaneous achievement. He allowed himself moments of stillness, sitting near the secured formula, observing the interplay of light, water, and suspended particles. Each subtle effect, each minor outcome, became part of a continuous reflection on purpose, power, and consequence. The quiet presence of the formula no longer symbolized a singular conquest, but a medium for deliberate creation, thoughtful application, and reflective mastery. The chum bucket, once a place of ambition and frustration, had transformed into a space of meditative practice, a laboratory of subtle effects and continuous, mindful observation. Through the long hours of night, Plankton maintained a deliberate rhythm, integrating reflection, action, and awareness. Each experiment, each subtle variation, each careful adjustment reinforced the understanding that mastery is inseparable from observation, patience, and integration. The cumulative effects of these continuous efforts created quiet ripples that extended beyond immediate perception, demonstrating that influence is both delicate and expansive, contingent upon sustained engagement. The quiet satisfaction of this realization carried with it a sense of measured accomplishment, tempered by the reflective acknowledgement of limitations and ongoing responsibility. By the early hours of morning, Plankton allowed a slow, deep breath, sensing the totality of his journey and its outcomes. The horizon of possibility, once distant, had been approached not through force or haste, but through the steady, reflective application of knowledge, attention, and patient experimentation. The formula's presence had provided the catalyst. Yet the quiet mastery that emerged was inseparable from the deliberate practice of observation, adjustment, and integration. He recognized the profound lesson that success, in its most enduring form, is the interplay of potential, effort, and thoughtful awareness. As dawn approached, the currents outside carried gentle light into the chum bucket, illuminating surfaces, instruments, and particles suspended in quiet motion. Plankton rose slowly, moving with deliberate attention, observing both environment and outcome with calm mindfulness. The formula, long sought and finally possessed, had revealed its subtleties. Power is real, but conditional. Influence extends beyond immediate action, and true accomplishment requires ongoing attentiveness, reflection, and patience. The quiet satisfaction of understanding settled gently, a steady awareness that flowed seamlessly into the rhythm of daily practice and continuous observation. He considered the future with reflective curiosity. Would the formula grant him ultimate success, as imagined for so many years? Or would the subtleties and limitations observed temper the influence he sought? The answer, gentle and ambiguous, rested not in binary triumph, but in the continuous, patient application of knowledge and careful attention. Success, it seemed, was not a fixed point, but an ongoing process, a delicate, expansive interplay of intention, mastery, and reflective awareness. The quiet acknowledgement of this truth carried with it a serene clarity, a meditative understanding that had taken years of pursuit, patient experimentation, and careful observation to fully perceive. The day unfolded slowly, each motion and decision guided by calm attentiveness. Plankton moved among his instruments, observing subtle variations, adjusting with deliberate care, and reflecting on the evolving relationship between intention and effect. The quiet mastery cultivated through this journey reinforced the meditative awareness that had become his companion. Influence, while potent, is shaped by sustained engagement, and every action carries consequence beyond immediate perception. The formula, once the object of fervent desire, now served as both tool and guide in the continuous practice of thoughtful, deliberate creation. By evening, the chum bucket had become a space of serene reflection. The currents outside moved in gentle, continuous patterns, carrying light and suspended particles in hypnotic rhythm. Plankton paused frequently, observing the interplay of environment, instrument, and creation, integrating each observation into a growing awareness of subtle effect and ongoing responsibility. The quiet realization emerged that the ultimate measure of the formula's power lay not solely in its ingredients, but in the practitioner's ability to sustain mindful observation, deliberate adjustment, and reflective engagement over time. Mastery was a continuous practice, unfolding slowly and quietly, like the soft flow of currents through the ocean. Night deepened, and Plankton allowed himself moments of stillness. He observed the minor ripples extending outward from his work, subtle interactions between elements, and the gentle resonance of careful experimentation with the surrounding environment. The quiet mastery that had guided him from anticipation through acquisition and ongoing application now merged with reflective awareness of consequence, potential, and limitation. The horizon of possibility, vast and expansive, had been approached with patience and attentiveness, revealing that true influence emerges through integration of observation, action, and continuous thoughtful engagement. By the final hours before dawn, Plankton rested near the secured formula, allowing the currents, light, and environment to envelop him in quiet contemplation. The long journey, from desire to acquisition, experimentation, reflection, and subtle mastery, had revealed profound truths about power, patience, and responsibility. The formula's efficacy, while tangible, was inseparable from thoughtful application, mindful attention, and sustained observation. Success, as it had emerged through this process, was neither absolute nor instantaneous, but quietly cumulative, measured in subtle ripples, reflective understanding, and the serene integration of knowledge and action. As light gradually filtered through the currents into the chum bucket, Plankton rose slowly, moving with deliberate care, observing both environment and outcomes with calm attentiveness. The formula, long desired, finally possessed and applied, had fulfilled its role not as a singular instrument of conquest, but as a guide to quiet mastery, reflective practice, and subtle influence. The ocean, the chum bucket, and the currents themselves bore witness to this continuous interplay of intention, effect, and patient engagement. In the gentle unfolding of this realization, Plankton found a serene clarity. Success was measured not in immediate dominance, but in the quiet, continuous, and deliberate integration of knowledge, attention, and mindful action.